Godly essence. My golden void sword's power has been reduced to that of level 5. Jiang Chengxuan was in disbelief. Not only were his divine sense and dharmic power weakened by the rules of this place, but even his dharma treasures were restricted. It seemed that all spells and divine powers would similarly be affected. Thinking of this, Jiang Chengxuan immediately raised his hand and grabbed at the air. There was a clang. A long saber that was suffused with green light was grabbed out of the void. Then he slashed forward gently. There was a ripping sound. There was a tearing sound. Sparks flew once again from the tail of the centipede. As expected, the potency of my divine powers has also been reduced to level 5. No wonder this place could only allow soul formation cultivators to enter. Even soul formation cultivators were already affected like this. If nascent soul or even golden core cultivators were to enter, they'd likely be demoted several realms in an instant. Given the current situation, if nascent soul cultivators were to enter, their strength might be reduced to Violet Palace. Golden core cultivators would fare even worse, potentially regressing to mere Qi refinement. How could those at Qi refinement or Violet Palace possibly survive in such a place? It's unthinkable. Seeing the centipede's increasingly ferocious aura, with the rest of its body emerging from the desert beyond its tail, it was evident that the creature was 100 meters long. Its blood-red eyes glinted with brutality and greed as it lunged directly at Jiang Chengxuan. You're courting death. A hint of murderous intent flashed in Jiang Chengxuan's eyes. He raised his hand to form a spell. There was a buzz. The golden void sword, which was clashing with the centipede's tail, suddenly brightened intensely. Swoosh! A piercing screech suddenly filled the air. Then the golden void sword transformed into a streak of golden light, tipped with flickers of golden flame. It pierced through the tail of the centipede in a flash, continuing forward and finally emerging from the creature's mouth with a swoosh. Roar! Struck so heavily, the enormous centipede twisted in agony. Its body, initially lunging towards Jiang Chengxuan, recoiled and thrashed wildly on the sandy ground. Thick streams of purplish-black blood oozed from its body, soaking the ground and emitting a corrosive hissing sound. Jiang Chengxuan watched for a moment before making his move. With one swift action, his Azure Emperor's heaven-slaying saber passed through the creature's head, ending its suffering. He had to admit, the centipede was incredibly powerful at the nascent soul level, but it met its match in him. If it were anyone else, they might really suffer a huge loss without knowing the exact situation here. After collecting some useful materials from the centipede, Jiang Chengxuan was about to leave the area when suddenly, a system notification echoed in his mind. Ding! System mission issued. Host, please complete the achievement of killing level 5 demon beasts 1,000 times. Current progress, 1,000. Huh? Surprised by the sudden system prompt, Jiang Chengxuan was momentarily taken aback. What was going on? Why would the system issue such a task out of the blue? Even in the outside world, accomplishing the feat of slaying 1,000 level 5 demon beasts would be a tall order, let alone here. Could it be? Wait. A realization struck him, and his pupils constricted slightly. Could it be that this place contained more than 1,000 level 5 demon beasts? No sooner had this thought crossed his mind than the ground beneath him began to shake violently. A massive cloud of dust erupted in the air ahead, and 7 or 8 centipedes, each with countless legs, appeared before Jiang Chengxuan. So it really was. Jiang Chengxuan's heart tensed. If this was indeed the case, were others in this place experiencing the same encounters as him? And just how many demon beasts had Sage Dragonmaster brought here? As he pondered, Jiang Chengxuan found himself clashing with a group of centipedes. Fortunately, although Jiang Chengxuan's Dharma powers, divine powers, and divine sense were all suppressed by the rules here, his physical strength remained unaffected, maintaining its peak condition. With such physical prowess, completing the system's task seemed feasible, assuming there were indeed enough level 5 demon beasts to hunt. Otherwise, he could only consider completing this mission after leaving this place. Boom, boom, boom. In just a moment, the 7 to 8 centipede demon beasts that appeared in front of him were killed by Jiang Chengxuan one by one. Roar! However, just after he killed those 7 or 8 centipede demon beasts from beneath the desert, yet another 15 or 16 of them emerged. After Jiang Chengxuan dealt with these 15 or 16 centipedes, surprisingly, another 20 centipede demon beasts appeared from under the desert. It seemed like an endless cycle. As soon as one group was killed, another appeared. Indeed, in just a few hours, the number of centipede demon beasts killed by Jiang Chengxuan had reached 600 to 700. By this time, if he hadn't noticed something abnormal, it would have meant he was too slow to react. To be precise, the first 100 centipede demon beasts he killed could be considered genuine demon beasts. However, the centipedes that appeared afterward, while indistinguishable from real demon beasts, lacked the spiritual fluctuations of level 5 demon beasts. Simply put, the centipedes that appeared after the first 100 only had the strength of level 5 demon beasts, but not the corresponding realm. It was as if they were cloned creatures. These posed a threat to nascent soul cultivators, but the degree of danger was noticeably reduced compared to the earlier centipedes. Jiang Chengxuan wasn't sure what was going on, but since they kept appearing, he naturally wouldn't miss the opportunity to complete the system task. After a few more hours, the number of centipede demon beasts Jiang Chengxuan had killed had astonishingly reached more than 1,000. Just when he thought more would appear, he suddenly felt his body enveloped by a powerful teleporting force. There was a whoosh. When Jiang Chengxuan looked again, he found himself in a fog so thick he couldn't see his fingers in front of him. Even his divine sense was completely blocked, rendering him unable to see his surroundings. Fortunately, his heavenly eye of insight still worked to some extent, allowing him to clearly see an area of about 100 meters around him. Ding! Just as he was about to carefully observe his surroundings, a system notification suddenly sounded in his mind. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the achievement of killing 1,000 level 5 demon beasts. You have obtained the demon-suppressing ring and a bottle of mystic pill of godly essence. The demon-suppressing ring was a silver-white bracelet with only one function, usable only once per day. It had the power to nullify any innate abilities or divine powers used by demon beasts against the wearer. In other words, once the ring's suppressing ability was activated, no matter what divine powers the demon beasts used, they would be rendered completely ineffective. I must admit, this is indeed a supreme weapon against the demon race. Although its function can only be used once a day, if employed at a critical moment, it could have an unexpectedly significant effect. It's a major trump card for dealing with the demon race. As for the bottle of mystic pill of godly essence, it is a medicinal pill that can be used by cultivators at the soul formation stage. It's hugely beneficial for both himself and Shen Ruyan right now. It can greatly increase their cultivation speed. Setting these thoughts aside for the moment, Jiang Chengxuan refocused his attention on the environment around him. Jiang Chengxuan realized that he seemed to have arrived at a maze-like place. There were tall walls on both sides. He did not know what materials or arrays were used to strengthen these walls. With his strength, he could not move it at all. Most importantly, ever since he arrived at this place, he realized that he could no longer fly. It was as if there was a flight prohibition array set up in this place. Even with his cultivation level, he was not exempt. Secondly, every 2 meters he walked, a crossroads would appear in front of him. He needed to choose a path and continue forward. However, after trying for some time, he noticed that he would end up back where he started. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan had a rough guess about the mechanism of this ruin. If he was not wrong, everything he had experienced just now should be a test. This ruin was specially designed to test everyone who entered. If he could pass through, he might be able to touch the core of this realm. If he couldn't pass, Jiang Chengxuan thought that there might not be any real danger. At most, he would get nothing and be expelled from this realm. Of course, this was only his guess. He was not 100% sure about it. The true nature of this ruin could only be ascertained by observing how things developed. He continued walking for a while. When Jiang Chengxuan returned to the starting point for the 29th time, he suddenly had an intuition. If he made 7 more wrong choices, he feared he might be expelled from the ruin. This feeling came suddenly, but Jiang Chengxuan did not doubt it at all. He knew that this should be the work of his passive divine power, intuition of the heavens. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan understood that if he wanted to navigate through the maze, relying solely on his heavenly eye of insight would likely be futile. In fact, the limited visibility not only failed to assist him, but could potentially mislead him, causing further disorientation within the maze. To truly find a way out of this maze, without knowing the specific direction, the only thing Jiang Chengxuan could rely on was his passive divine power, intuition of the heavens. Following this line of thought, he closed his eyes, allowing various intuitions to guide him. He followed these instincts, taking one step after another, making several mistakes before finding the right path on his fourth attempt. Upon taking the right step, Jiang Chengxuan quickly felt his body passing through some kind of barrier. There was a splash. He found himself in a cave. Upon opening his eyes, he realized that he had successfully navigated out of the maze. In front of him was a cave flourishing with over a dozen spiritual flowers and herbs, all surrounded by an abundant spiritual qi that was refreshing to breathe in. Most importantly, all the spiritual flowers and herbs in the cave were of level 6, greatly beneficial to soul formation cultivators. Among them was the level 6 body-tempering precious herb, True Blood. Ginseng, a blood-red, ginseng-like herb with a rich fragrance. It seemed that this was the reward for passing the 2 challenges. This thought flashed across Jiang Chengxuan's mind. Just as Jiang Chengxuan was about to approach the area with the True Blood ginseng, he sensed a faint barrier separating him from these valuable herbs. This was really. Every step in this place seemed to have an underlying test. Fortunately, with his current mastery in arrays, breaking the barrier didn't seem too difficult. About half a day later, Jiang Chengxuan had successfully collected the True Blood ginseng and other surrounding spiritual herbs into his storage ring. After thoroughly searching the cave to ensure nothing was overlooked, he decided not to stay any longer and walked towards the exit of the cave. Buzz. As Jiang Chengxuan passed through the entrance of the cave, his surroundings slightly wavered. When he looked again, the cave had vanished, replaced by a vast plain teeming with first and second level demonic beasts. The abundant greenery lent a vibrant feel to the area. Is he being asked to explore on his own now? Jiang Chengxuan could clearly sense that the scene in the Death Desert and the maze just now seemed to be gone. Instead, he now faced a scenario that allowed for more freedom and self-directed exploration. It seemed that what he could discover or achieve here depended entirely on his own fortune. With this realization, Jiang Chengxuan cast a spell to enhance his luck, harnessing all the good fortune he had accumulated over time and channeling it upon himself. Buzz. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan didn't hesitate anymore. After finding a direction, he quickly set out. Boom! After traveling for about half a day, he suddenly heard a loud rumbling in the distance. Jiang Chengxuan immediately determined that someone was fighting there. Immediately, Jiang Chengxuan concealed his aura and slowly approached. It could be seen that the battle there was very intense. They were so occupied that they didn't pay attention to the surroundings. While Jiang Chengxuan was approaching, he clearly sensed that there was another person who was approaching the site like him. Most importantly, the other party's ability to conceal his aura was not brilliant. Under normal circumstances, their presence would have been easily detectable, but at the moment, the situation was clearly different. As for Jiang Chengxuan and that person, their divine senses were restricted here. So, the two of them were hundreds of miles away from the battle before they could clearly see the situation with their naked eyes. The ones fighting were a human and a demon. That demon did not seem to be a demon from the outside world. Instead, it was a demon beast native to this ruin. Its strength had reached level 5. It was a wolf with a snow-white horn on its forehead. As for the human, Jiang Chengxuan did not know her. It was a beautiful female cultivator in an azure dress. She was also a soul formation, heavenly lord in the outside world. However, in this ruin, her cultivation and strength had been weakened and suppressed. At most, she could only unleash the combat strength of the nascent soul stage. Even so, she still had the upper hand in the battle with the one-horned wolf. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before the female cultivator won. Jiang Chengxuan had no intention of getting involved in the battle between the human and demon. At this moment, most of his attention was focused on the fellow who was hiding here like him. It was because he had already recognized that person's identity. It was none other than Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun from the Three Suns sect. Unlike Jiang Chengxuan, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun had already placed all his attention on the female cultivator in the blue dress and the single-horned wolf. It was as if he was waiting for something. This immediately made Jiang Chengshuan realize that Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun seemed to be waiting for the opportunity to attack the female cultivator in the blue dress. What was going on? Logically speaking, the female cultivator in the blue dress should be a soul. Formation Heavenly Lord from the eastern end, or the central region. Weren't both sides allies? Why did he have the intention to attack that person? Wait, if that blue-dressed female cultivator's identity was. At this moment, Jiang Chengshuan suddenly thought of a possibility. He immediately had an answer in his heart. Perhaps that blue-dressed female cultivator really wasn't their ally. Boom! At this moment, the female cultivator in the blue dress suddenly took out a colorful ribbon from her body. In an instant, the huge body of the one-horned wolf was immediately bound by the colorful ribbon. For a moment, it was unable to break free. As for the blue-dressed female cultivator, she took advantage of this opportunity to raise her hand. In the next moment, a cold light flashed towards the head of the one-horned wolf. Before the cold light arrived, a wind-like howl sounded in the air. The terrifying danger of death caused the snow-white horn on the wolf's forehead to instantly turn blood-red. Roar! It was also at this moment that the one-horned wolf's entire body suddenly expanded. That unreasonable power actually caused the rainbow ribbon of the blue-dressed female cultivator to dim a little. Crack! At the same time, a blood-colored lightning bolt suddenly shot out from the horn of the one-horned wolf. There was a loud bang. The blood-colored lightning collided with the cold light. Suddenly, the clash between the blue-dressed woman and the single-horned green wolf erupted with a sound akin to a nuclear explosion. Terrifying ripples of energy spread rapidly in all directions from the point of impact. The woman's face turned slightly pale, and she retreated a few steps. Meanwhile, the wolf, now with blood-red eyes, radiated a sense of madness. Its eyes also turned blood-red. Its body increased in size, breaking free from the colorful ribbon that bound it. With a sound of ripping, the ribbon broke. The woman's expression changed subtly, and she quickly produced a golden bell. Clang! The bell's sound, piercing directly to the primordial spirit, momentarily stunned the frenzied wolf. However, it soon regained its senses and, in a decisive move, began to radiate blinding light from all over its body, choosing to self-destruct. In normal circumstances, the woman, being a soul formation heavenly lord, wouldn't be concerned about a level 5 demon beast self-destruction. However, the situation was different in this ruin. With her dharmic powers and cultivation weakened and suppressed, she was very concerned about the self-destruction of a level 5 demon beast. It was very likely that she would be severely injured, or even on the verge of death. If such a thing really happened, it would really be a joke. The blue-dressed female cultivator would never allow such a thing to happen. So in the next moment, she suddenly clasped her hands together. An extremely ear-piercing sound was heard. The colorful ribbon binding the single-horned wolf suddenly tightened, risking damage to itself. The wolf's massive body twisted grotesquely under the immense pressure, almost being crushed into pulp. However, the woman in the blue dress was a fraction too slow. Just as the wolf's body was about to be completely crushed, it reached a critical point in its self-destruction. First, its body imploded inward, then, like an inflating balloon, rapidly expanded outwards before erupting in a massive explosion. Even the pure Yang true treasure, the colorful ribbon, dimmed in the face of such a blast, and a long tear appeared on its surface. This caused the woman in blue to turn pale and cough up blood, her aura plummeting in an instant. Now is the time. Seizing the opportunity, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun, who had been lurking in the shadows, now unleashed his ferocious killing intent. A streak of sword light shot straight towards the woman in blue, who was now vulnerable in the sky. Danger! The sudden crisis drastically changed the woman in the blue dress's complexion. Weakened from her fight with the single-horned wolf and already injured, she struggled to fend off Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun's prepared strike. She swiftly brought out a colorful handkerchief. The handkerchief grew in the wind, quickly expanding to dozens of meters wide, shielding her. Puff! However, such a defense could not completely block Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun's attack. Under the sharp sword light, the colorful handkerchief's light quickly dimmed. There was a tearing sound. Several cracks immediately appeared on the surface of the handkerchief. It spun and flew back into the blue-dressed female cultivator's hand. At that moment, the female cultivator finally saw Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun's face. A look of shock and anger appeared on her face. "Tranquil Sun, it's you." As she spoke, the female cultivator took out an umbrella. Fluffy white clouds enveloped her, forming a protective barrier. Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun snorted. "It's useless, Blue Moon. Today you are destined to die here." As soon as he finished speaking, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun's sword light became even more ferocious. Boom, boom, boom. The umbrella that Blue Moon took out kept vibrating. The white clouds quickly dissipated under the dense rain of swords. Most importantly, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun took out a jade ruler that shone with a scarlet light. As soon as the jade ruler appeared, it emitted a scorching glow, evaporating more than half of the white clouds. Inferno Sun Ruler. Blue Moon's pretty face changed drastically again. She was well aware that the artifact Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun wielded was the ultimate treasure of the Three Suns sect, capable of incinerating everything in the world. With this pure Yang true treasure, even if she was in a perfect state, it would probably be very difficult for her to be the other party's match. Not to mention at this moment, she was afraid that she would really fall today. However, at this moment, Blue Moon seemed to have sensed something. Her gaze suddenly looked not far away from her. There, a five-colored light suddenly swept towards the Inferno Sun Ruler. Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun was shocked as well. He did not expect there to be a third person hiding in the surroundings. His expression immediately darkened. However, before he could react, the five-colored light had already swept past the ruler that he had summoned. Instantly, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun felt that the connection between him and the ruler had disappeared. How could this be? Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun was shocked. He quickly turned in that direction. Jang was slowly walking out of a certain void. In his hand was the Inferno Sun Ruler. There was also a faint smile on his face. "Tranquil Sun, we meet again." As he spoke, he played with the Inferno Sun Ruler in his hand and nodded with a satisfied expression. "Not bad. This pure Yang true treasure of your Three Suns sect is not bad. I'll take it." Jang Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun said with difficulty. However, his heart had already sunk. He hadn't expected to be so unlucky as to encounter Jiang Chengxuan in this place, and even lose his sect's treasured ruler to him. Jiang Chengxuan, however, didn't seem interested in responding. He casually put away the Inferno Sun Ruler and slowly said, "Last time you were lucky to escape with your life. This time, sorry, you might not be so fortunate." Swoosh. As soon as Jiang Chengxuan's words fell, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun, without hesitation, transformed into a streak of light and fled towards the distance. He actually chose to escape. What a joke! Back then, when this guy was at the nascent soul stage, he could already fight 3 soul formation cultivators. Now that Jiang Chengxuan had reached the soul formation stage, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun knew that his strength was definitely beyond his imagination. Even in this ruin, where everyone's cultivation and strength were greatly weakened and suppressed. However, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun was not confident that he could do anything to Jiang Chengxuan. Jiang Chengxuan wasn't surprised by Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun's escape attempt. A giant rock phantom appeared behind him, and in the next moment he stretched into a line of twisted light. There was a swish. Golden light flashed. Jiang Chengxuan appeared in front of Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun, who was escaping. At that moment, Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun froze on the spot. He lowered his head in a daze and looked at his body. A long golden line had appeared on his body at some point in time. It extended from the center of his brows all the way down. "You?" He only had time to say this one word before his entire body was split into 2 halves. Then the violent blade-like cutting force directly twisted him into nothingness. After collecting the storage ring that fell from Heavenly Lord Tranquil Sun, Jiang Chengxuan turned to Blue Moon with a smile. "Fellow Taoist Blue Moon of the Rising Sun Hall, I believe this is our first meeting." "That's right." Blue Moon was a soul formation, Heavenly Lord from the Rising Sun Hall. When she heard Jiang Chengxuan's greeting, she immediately went forward gratefully and bowed to him. "Greetings, fellow Taoist Jiang. I'm indebted to you for your timely rescue. I cannot thank you enough." "Fellow Taoist Blue Moon, you are welcome." Jiang Chengxuan waved his hand. "Considering my relationship with the 3S sect, I would not have spared him even without your presence, given the opportunity." At this point, Jiang Chengxuan looked at the spring water behind the two of them that was flickering with starlight. Next, Blue Moon. Let's talk about the distribution of the galaxy spring. The so-called galaxy spring was a spiritual object that could help cultivators increase their chances of advancing to soul formation. At the same time, it was also the main ingredient for many level 6 pills. It was a rather precious cultivation resource. In the outside world, this kind of galaxy spring was rare. However, there was a large area here. This was also the main reason for the battle between Blue Moon and the single-horned wolf. Blue Moon was not surprised when Jiang Chengxuan mentioned the galaxy spring. She smiled and said, "After you saved me, fellow Taoist Jiang, it would be entirely reasonable to offer you the entire spring. However, my rising sun hall also needs it. So, if you don't mind, I'll take just 1/10 of it, leaving the rest to you. Does that sound fair to you?" Huh? Jiang Chengxuan looked at Blue Moon in surprise. He really did not expect Blue Moon to only want 10% of such a large galaxy spring. It was not hard to tell that Blue Moon was quite self-aware. However, Jiang Chengxuan wouldn't take advantage of her. Although strength was everything in the cultivation world, it was only natural that he agreed to Blue Moon's distribution plan. However, Jiang Chengxuan had his own principles of conduct. He chuckled and shook his head, saying, "Regardless, you discovered this place first, and it was you who defeated the guardian beast. If I were to take 9/10 of the galaxy spring, I would feel ashamed of myself. How about this? I'll take 60% and the remaining 40% will be yours. What do you think?" Blue Moon seemed surprised by Jiang Chengxuan's proposal. She had long heard that Jiang Chengxuan and his wife, Shen Ruyan, were very principled in their actions, and it seemed the rumors were true. After pondering for a moment, she replied, 40% is really too much. Since you, fellow Taoist Jiang, are so principled, I cannot fail to appreciate your kindness. Let's settle for 20%. I'll take only 20% of the galaxy spring, and the rest can be a token of friendship between us. What do you think?" Seeing that Blue Moon had made her stance clear, Jiang Chengxuan did not refuse anymore. After nodding, the two of them took their share of the galaxy spring. After that, the two of them tacitly did not mention anything about traveling together. After exchanging some pleasantries, they bade each other farewell. A few days later, Jiang Chengxuan had already arrived at the end of the plain. Along the way, he had made several worthwhile discoveries, albeit not as valuable as the galaxy spring or the true blood ginseng. Nevertheless, these treasures would surely cause a stir if brought into the outside world. In addition, he even tried to contact Shen Ruyan and the others many times. But just like at the beginning, there was no response. Even the treasures that were specially used to locate each other were ineffective in this ruin. At this moment, what appeared in front of Jiang Chengxuan was an incomparably magnificent staircase. The steps stretched upward, seemingly without end, even to his keen eyesight. However, his intuition told him, as long as he could reach the top of the stairs, he would be able to obtain unexpected benefits. Jiang Chengxuan stood in front of the stairs and observed for a long time. However, with his experience, he could not confirm what material these steps were made of. He had even attacked the steps experimentally with various methods, but they remained completely undamaged, unaffected by his attacks. Realizing that the only way to understand the stairs was to ascend them, Jiang Chengxuan hesitated briefly before stepping onto the first stair, ready to uncover its secrets. Buzz! As Jiang Chengxuan stepped onto the staircase, the first step emitted a faint glow. Instantly, he felt a myriad of emotions buried deep within his heart being drawn out. Joy, anger, sorrow, excitement, greed, and more. Fortunately, these evoked emotions were not overwhelmingly strong. After a while, Jiang Chengxuan managed to suppress them all. This led Jiang Chengxuan to speculate about the nature of the staircase. Could it be a staircase of inner inquiry? Each step seemed to represent a level of testing, and the higher he went, the more challenging it appeared to become. With this thought in mind, Jiang Chengxuan didn't hesitate and proceeded to the second step. Buzz! Indeed, the emotions evoked here were noticeably more intense than those from the first step, confirming his guess. This was indeed a staircase of inner inquiry. The challenges would increase with each step upwards. He also had a strong premonition that retreating on this staircase would signify failure, and there would be no second chance. So, he could only ascend and not descend. With this realization, Jiang Chengxuan continued upward. Buzz. However, the challenge on the next step was no longer just emotional, but also included a sense of murderous intent. That murderous intent could be said to be pure to the extreme, constantly stimulating his nerves. So much so that his hair stood on end. Upon reaching the ninth step, a scene of a tumultuous battlefield unfolded before his eyes. Countless floating warships soared in the sky, firing spiritual chi cannons and beams of rune light crisscrossed in the air. Large chunks of blood and limbs were scattered everywhere. Even Jiang Chengxuan himself was covered in wounds amidst such a large-scale war. His body was riddled with countless injuries. It was only after some time, when Jiang Chengxuan emerged from this illusion, that he realized he was still standing on the ninth step. There were no floating battleships or a body covered in wounds. It was all fake. Yet Jiang Chengxuan felt a slight chill in his heart. He clearly understood that if he had continued to immerse himself in the atmosphere of that war and couldn't detach from it, the so-called illusion might very well have become reality. This meant that the staircase of inner inquiry was not entirely without danger. Once the illusions here exceeded one's limit of endurance, one might truly fall into that illusory world. At that time, no one knew what would happen. Realizing this, Jiang Chengxuan became even more cautious about the staircase of inner inquiry in front of him. But he had no intention of backing out. He was curious now. What would happen if he passed through this enormous staircase of inner inquiry and reached the top? What different view would he see then? What different view would he see then? Buzz. Different from the previous 9 steps, when Jiang Chengxuan stood on the 10th step, his mind was filled with extremely erotic images. Various beautifully dressed women danced before him. Jiang Chengxuan could even distinctly smell the faint fragrance emanating from these beautiful women. His body unconsciously reacted to the situation. Fortunately, his consciousness was not truly deceived by the scene before his eyes. However, he knew that this was just the beginning. As he continued to ascend, the erotic scenes intensified. In the end, even someone as strong-willed as him almost fell for it. Luckily, he managed to overcome this challenge in the end. When he was about to step onto the 20th step, several streaks of light suddenly appeared not far from the staircase of inner inquiry. Among them were familiar faces like Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing. Additionally, there were a few individuals from the eastern end and the central plain. One was Chu Xing from the eastern end's Chu family, and the other was Wu Xin from the central plain. When the two sides met, it was naturally unavoidable for them to be at daggers drawn. However, soon their attention was drawn to Jiang Chengxuan on the staircase of inner inquiry. Their eyes met. Jiang Chengxuan ignored Chu Xing and Wu Xin and communicated through voice transmission, explaining the situation of the staircase of inner inquiry to Xuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing. Of course, he did not go into details, simply informing them that the staircase was a test of one's heart. As for the specific nature of the test, Jiang Chengxuan did not elaborate. After all, he could not be sure whether the test experienced by those who ascended the staircase would be exactly the same. If not, it would mislead Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing. The losses outweighed the gains. Upon learning about the staircase of inner inquiry, Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing did not hesitate. They immediately stepped onto the staircase. Seeing this, Chu Xing and Wu Xin were surprised. They didn't expect Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing to decisively ascend the staircase. This caused Chu Xing and Wu Xin to exchange glances, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. The next moment, without a moment's hesitation, the two launched an attack on Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing, who had already stepped onto the staircase of inner inquiry. A terrifying radiance blossomed, with a whisk and a pagoda aimed simultaneously at Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing on the staircase. Buzz. However, unexpectedly, just as their attacks were about to reach Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing, a radiant light suddenly emerged from the staircase. With 2 thuds, the attacks from Chu Xing and Wu Xin were repelled, not affecting Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing in the slightest. Seeing that, Chu Xing and Wu Xin were taken aback. They had never expected such a turn of events. It became clear that as long as someone was on the staircase of inner inquiry, they would not be affected by external attacks. If that was the case, Chu Xing and Wu Xin looked at each other again. Without any hesitation, the two of them stepped onto the staircase as well. However, unlike Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing, Chu Xing and Wu Xin, who were unaware of the staircase's nature, almost stumbled and fell as soon as they stepped onto it, barely maintaining their balance. They were shocked to find that the staircase could amplify their inner emotions. Once they recovered from the surge of emotions, their gazes instinctively turned towards Jiang Chengxuan, who was already on the 20th step. That guy had already reached the 20th step. They wondered what he had experienced on the previous steps and realized that this place might hold immense opportunities. Seeing Jiang Chengxuan already far ahead of them evoked a sense of urgency in the others. What if the opportunity at this place was only available to the first person who reached the top? Would that mean the rest of them were just running along in vain? This concern was heightened when they saw Jiang Chengxuan ascend another step in such a short time. However, what Chu Xing and Wu Xin didn't realize was that on this staircase of inner inquiry, the most important thing was not to be impatient. Once you become hasty, anything could happen in the process ahead, especially when your inner emotions are infinitely amplified by the steps of the staircase. A slight misstep could easily lead to losing one's mind, and such a state is often not easily noticeable in the early stages. By the time one realizes it, it might be too late. Just like that, several hours passed. Jiang Chengxuan had already arrived at the 37th step. As for Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang, Dongfeng Tianxing, and Chu Xing, they had only reached the 6th and 7th steps. None of them had reached the 10th step. This gap between them and Jiang Chengxuan was evident. Initially, Jiang Chengxuan was moving up a step at a time seamlessly. Only when he reached the 20th step did he begin to slow down. As Jiang Chengxuan was about to step onto the 38th step, several streaks of light suddenly flew through the sky from a distance. The person flying at the front was none other than Jiang Chengxuan's Tao companion, Shen Ruyan. Behind her were Murong Xian, Heavenly Lord Infinite Ocean, and Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain. At this moment, the groups from the northern border and the western desert had all gathered. When they saw Jiang Chengxuan, Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang, Dongfeng Tianxing, Chu Xing, and Wu Xin on the staircase of inner inquiry, they all revealed a look of shock. They did not expect Jiang Chengxuan and the others to be so harmonious with Chu Xing and Wu Xin on the staircase of inner inquiry. There must be something that they did not know. At that thought, Shen Ruyan and the others subconsciously looked at Jiang Chengxuan, who was already on the 38th step. Feeling the gaze of Shen Ruyan and the others, Jiang Chengxuan immediately relayed to them what he knew about the situation. Shen Ruyan and her group were noticeably surprised upon hearing this, and without hesitation, they too stepped onto the staircase of inner inquiry. After some time, many more streaks of light appeared in the distance. Jiang Chengxuan and the others recognized that these were cultivators from the eastern end and the central plain, including familiar figures such as Xiao Shenkang, Xiao Shenji, and Taoist Shang Tong. In addition, Jiang Chengxuan also saw Blue Moon and another soul formation cultivator from the Rising Sun Hall. Without hesitation, Jiang Chengxuan communicated with Blue Moon, informing her about the situation. Blue Moon, after a moment of contemplation, stepped onto the staircase of inner inquiry with her companion. Xiao Shenkang and the others also ascended the staircase. It was at this moment that many more streaks of light approached from afar. However, the aura emanating from these newcomers was not of human cultivators, but unmistakably of the demon race. Jiang Chengxuan and the others swept their gazes over and their hearts skipped a beat. The reason for that was because they had all recognized that the fellows that had appeared were soul formation demon sovereigns. Among them, a few possessed such powerful auras that even Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan had to take them seriously, as their strength was comparable to their own. Unless they were willing to use their true trump cards, it would probably be quite difficult for them to kill the other party with their current strength. Moreover, who didn't have a few trump cards to protect themselves after reaching soul formation? "Is this the ancient staircase of inner inquiry?" exclaimed one of the demon sovereigns, who had transformed into a middle-aged man. He was known as Centurion Tiger Sovereign and carried a trace of the white tiger bloodline within him. Hearing his words, not only were the demon sovereigns surprised, but even Jiang Chengxuan and the others, who were already on the staircase of inner inquiry, were slightly surprised. He did not expect that, among those demon sovereigns, there was actually someone who recognized this staircase of inner inquiry. Centurion Tiger, what is the meaning of the staircase of inner inquiry? Elder Black Tortoise, who had transformed into an old man, spoke slowly. The Centurion Tiger Sovereign nodded slowly. In ancient times, this staircase of inner inquiry was used to test the temperament of disciples. It is said that those who could ascend 50 steps were considered to possess an excellent temperament and the potential to achieve soul formation. Ascending 70 steps indicated the potential for the late stage of soul formation. Climbing 2 steps suggested the potential to become a divine lord, and 500 steps, the potential to reach Tao fusion. Anyone reaching such heights, regardless of their past cultivation talents, would receive significant training and focus from their sect. Moreover, as far as I know, although this staircase of inner inquiry is primarily for testing one's temperament, it also serves as a tool to temper one's will. The only caution is not to push oneself too hard. Exceeding one's mental and emotional limits could turn the illusions into reality, potentially consuming the individual. Centurion Tiger Sovereign conveyed this through telepathy to the other demon sovereigns present. After hearing his words, they all became interested in the staircase of inner inquiry. At that moment, Ink Dragon Demon Sovereign, who had transformed into a robust man, asked Centurion Tiger, "Tiger, since the ancient staircase of inner inquiry was such, does our present staircase differ in any way? Simply put, if we ascend to the top of this staircase of inner inquiry, will there be any benefits or rewards?" Needless to say, this question was of paramount concern to everyone present. Their purpose here was for the benefits. They were more interested in tangible gains than ancient lore. Centurion Tiger Sovereign nodded. There are definitely benefits. Not to mention anything else, the tests on the staircase alone are opportunities to refine one's temperament. Besides, I suspect this staircase of inner inquiry might also be a test for us by this ruin. If we can pass it, it's very possible for us to obtain all the inheritances in this ruin. Upon hearing the possibility of gaining all the inheritances of the ruin, the demon sovereigns like Ink Dragon and Elder Black Tortoise were visibly excited. The benefits they had obtained from the ruins along the way were already very huge. If they could really turn everything here into their own, how terrifying would this harvest be? No wonder all the human heavenly lords had stepped onto the staircase. It seemed like they all had the same thoughts. With this realization, the demon sovereigns could no longer sit still and began to ascend the staircase of inner inquiry. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the entire staircase lit up continuously. Evidently, everyone only had one goal, and that was to reach the top of the staircase. However, what they didn't know was that the staircase of inner inquiry, used by ancient sects to test disciples, was not easy to overcome. Even if all of them present were soul formation beings, this was still the case. A few days later, on the staircase of inner inquiry, suddenly, a moose demon sovereign, transformed into a middle-aged scholar, burst into flames. Strangely, there were no screams or attempts to escape the raging flames. He stood quietly, smiling, as he slowly turned to ashes, with both his body and soul completely obliterated. This scene shocked all the demon sovereigns, and even the soul formation heavenly lords present. However, before they could recover from their shock, another catastrophe unfolded on a different step. A soul formation heavenly lord from the central plane suddenly became engulfed in a black wind that could erode flesh and bone. At this moment, he just stood there quietly, allowing the black wind to blow past his body, cutting his flesh and blood bit by bit, turning his bones into powder. In the end, just like Moose Demon Sovereign, his body and soul were destroyed. Fellow Taoist He Yuan, Xiao Shenkong and the others could not help but exclaim. They were clearly the same as those demon sovereigns. They did not expect that danger would come so suddenly on the staircase. It was so sudden that they had no time to react. I understand now. Suddenly, a man named Heavenly Lord Kyan Yun said, "This is the backlash of the illusion. If we cannot detach ourselves from these illusions, we will continue to sink until we meet the same fate as Taoist He Yuan." He then turned his gaze towards Zhang Chengxuan, who had already reached the 53rd step. "Zhang Chengxuan, did you already know all this? No matter what, we're all humans. Why didn't you remind us beforehand?" Heavenly Lord Kyan Yun was an independent cultivator in the central plane. Although he claimed to be an independent cultivator, how could someone at the soul formation stage not have some backing or a stance? Zhang Chengxuan couldn't be bothered to answer such a person's question. Instead, he continued to focus on the next step in front of him. You? Being ignored by Jiang Chengxuan, Heavenly Lord Kaiyan Yun felt embarrassed. Anger flashed in his eyes. But in the end, he still looked at the others present and said, "Everyone, no matter what, I believe that all of you have already seen how dangerous this place is. For safety, it's best to proceed according to your abilities. Don't force it. If it's too much, we can always try to ascend the staircase another time." Having said that, Heavenly Lord Kaiyan Yun left the staircase of inner inquiry on his own accord. Those who knew the ins and outs, like Jiang Chengxuan, could only smirk inwardly at these self-deluded individuals. Once they descended, they could forget about having a second chance to ascend the staircase. At this moment, several people did the same as Heavenly Lord Kaiyan Yun. This included several demon sovereigns. In the beginning, they did not think much of it. However, when they tried to ascend the staircase of inner inquiry a second time, they were shocked to find that no matter what they did, they couldn't set foot on it again. How could this be? Heavenly Lord Kaiyan Yun and the others were confused. Could it be that the opportunity to undergo the test of the staircase of inner inquiry was only given once? If you voluntarily give up, there's no second chance. Realizing this possibility, the faces of Heavenly Lord Kaiyan Yun and others changed. If this were true, it would be a tremendous loss. The cultivators from the eastern end, the central plane, and the demon sovereigns all looked troubled. If the staircase of inner inquiry could only be ascended and not retreated from, giving up would mean forfeiting the opportunity. In that case, the difficulty of this trip up the staircase had undoubtedly increased by several levels. Most importantly, observing Jiang Chengxuan at the top, it seemed as though he hadn't encountered any major challenges. In just a short while, he had ascended another 5 or 6 steps. What this implied was very clear to those on the staircase. If Jiang Chengxuan, by some stroke of luck, passed a certain level or even the entire staircase, potentially gaining control of the entire inheritance, it would be awful news. With their current speed, it was almost impossible for them to catch up to Jiang Chengxuan. What to do? Should they just let him continue ascending? At this moment, both the demon sovereigns and soul formation heavenly lords from the eastern end and central plane had a slightly sinister look in their eyes. However, Jiang Chengxuan seemed completely oblivious to all this, continuing his ascent with a calm demeanor. Boom! Suddenly, Elder Black Tortoise on the staircase of inner inquiry furiously wielded his staff. The staff grew rapidly in size, transforming into a mountainous figure, crashing down towards Jiang Chengxuan. Thud, thud, thud. At the same time, Wu Xin rang a giant bell, generating visible sound waves that rapidly enveloped Jiang Chengxuan. Buzz! But just then, a series of light screens appeared on the stair Jiang Chengxuan was on, instantly reflecting the attacks from Elder Black Tortoise and Wu Xin back at them. What? The man and the demon were both slightly shocked. But soon their eyes turned sharp. Even if we can't harm you, we must disrupt you, they declared. With that, the pair, along with others including Xiao Shenkang, Xiao Shenji, and Ink Dragon, launched continuous attacks at Jiang Chengxuan, aiming to distract him. However, hours passed, and Jiang Chengxuan seemed entirely unaffected by their interference, steadily and continuously climbing upwards. Damn it! Is he really not affected by us at all? Elder Black Tortoise and the others looked visibly upset upon witnessing this. Shen Ruyan and her group scoffed at their futile attempts. The idea of distracting Jiang Chengxuan in such a manner was ludicrous. At this point, Xiao Shenkang, Elder Black Tortoise, and the others realized that disrupting Jiang Chengxuan in this way was likely impossible. Perhaps the only option left was to siege Jiang Chengxuan afterwards. However, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain and the others weren't stupid. When they felt they could no longer confidently ascend, they sat down on the steps, neither advancing nor retreating. In this way, even if Xiao Shenkang, Elder Black Tortoise, and the others wanted to catch up to Jiang Chengxuan, they would not have a chance. Buzz! At the moment when Jiang Chengxuan stepped onto the 70th stair of the staircase of inner inquiry, an object suddenly descended from above, landing in his hand. It was a spirit treasure, emitting a strong aura of spirituality. A level 7 spirit treasure. This scene left everyone present in utter shock. They could never have imagined that Jiang Chengxuan would obtain such a treasure upon reaching the 70th stair. That was a spirit treasure, possessed mostly by void-returning divine lords. With such a treasure, even if Jiang Chengxuan could only unleash a fraction of its power, he could instantly take down everyone present. Unknowingly, Elder Black Tortoise, Zio Shenkong, and the others present could not help but become terrified while feeling envious and jealous. If Jiang Chengxuan could really refine this treasure, even if he managed to refine a small portion of it, the people present would truly be in danger. Buzz. However, at that moment, the spirit treasure in Jiang Chengxuan's hand suddenly disintegrated into specks of light and vanished. This turn of events left everyone slightly baffled. What was going on? Why did the spirit treasure disappear? Could it be that the one just now was fake? But that wasn't right. Just now, they had clearly sensed that the aura emitted by the spirit treasure was absolutely the aura of a genuine spirit treasure. Even soul formation heavenly lords felt pressured by it. It was definitely a spirit treasure. Unknowingly, Elder Black Tortoise, Zio Shenkong, and the others could not help but feel suspicious. If the spirit treasure that Jiang Chengxuan had obtained just now was really fake, did that mean that the scene just now was actually a test for Jiang Chengxuan? If he could overcome even the temptation of a Lingbao, what else could possibly stop him? Indeed, in the following period of time, Jiang Chengxuan continued upward. 80 steps, 9 steps, 120 steps, 200 steps. For days, everyone watched as he climbed from the 70th to the 200th step. Boom! Then, at that crucial moment, a column of light descended upon him, causing his aura to surge dramatically. His cultivation level rose rapidly. The third level of soul formation, the fourth, the sixth, the eighth, and finally peaking at the ninth level, the pinnacle of soul formation. And still it continued to rise. This shouldn't be true, right? This should be fake, right? This should also be a test for Jiang Chengxuan, right? Despite everyone knowing that what they were witnessing could just be an illusion, they couldn't help feeling tense, uneasy, and anxious. What if Jiang Chengxuan's current state was real? Then what should they do? Whoosh! At this moment, several demon sovereigns and soul formation cultivators from the central plane on the staircase of inner inquiry could not withstand the pressure and actually retreated. With this retreat, they had completely lost the qualifications to climb the staircase. However, not many people paid attention to their withdrawal. Everyone's gaze was still fixed on Jiang Chengxuan. Boom! Finally, after a while, Jiang Chengxuan's cultivation suddenly seemed to have crossed a certain limit. It instantly became incomparably majestic and unfathomable. The expressions of the people who were staring at him immediately changed drastically. That's impossible. Demon Sovereign Ink Dragon was the first to exclaim. Taoist Shang Tong was also covered in cold sweat. His mouth was a little dry as he said, "It's fake, it must be fake." At that moment, they dared not even imagine the terrifying outcome if this scene were indeed real. Fortunately, it was indeed an illusion. As Jiang Chengxuan continued to ascend, the overwhelming presence enveloping him gradually dissipated, bringing relief to the onlookers. Everyone heaved a long sigh of relief. Many realized only then that they had been sweating profusely in anxiety. On the other hand, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, Heavenly Lord Infinite Ocean, Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang, and the others looked disappointed. To be honest, just now, they really hoped that it was all true. If it was true, then perhaps all the predicaments that the human race encountered would be instantly resolved. Shen Ruyan was the only one who was not disappointed by what had happened. Instead, she revealed a happy smile. She recognized that the experiences her husband had just undergone, though illusory, provided genuine enlightenment and a state of mind that was very real and profound. In other words, he had experienced the entire process from soul formation to void returning in advance. Is this fake? Certainly not. On the contrary, all of these personal experiences, feelings, and insights were precisely the greatest gains he obtained when he embarked on the staircase this time. She believes that from now on, her husband, Jiang Chengxuan, will definitely experience a significant breakthrough in his cultivation. As Jiang Chengxuan's wife and Tao companion, she naturally could not fall behind. At this moment, she let go of all external influences and wholeheartedly focused all her attention and spirit on the staircase of inner inquiry in front of her. Just like her husband, she too wanted to truly reach the pinnacle of the staircase. As for whether any unexpected events would occur to her husband during this process, or if he would be pushed off the staircase halfway. Shen Ruyan was not worried about any of that. She believed in her husband and Tao companion, just as she believed in herself. They would definitely reach the pinnacle of the staircase of inner inquiry together. Buzz. At this moment, Shen Ruyan's footsteps continued to ascend. In the blink of an eye, she had crossed over a dozen steps. This scene once again caught the attention of the onlookers. Especially Xiao Shenkong, Elder Black Tortoise, and the others. They could not hide the malice in their eyes. Could it be that after Jiang Chengxuan, his Tao partner Shen Ruyan would also ascend all the way up? The thought of this possibility made them all feel a sense of urgency. At that moment, Xiao Shenkong, Elder Black Tortoise, and the others did not continue to divert their attention. They also placed all their attention on the staircase in front of them. Just like that, everyone began to climb the staircase of inner inquiry with all their might. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, it was already several days later. This time, Jiang Chengxuan's steps had already reached the 499th step. Heavenly Lord Kaiyan Yun and the others who were at the bottom couldn't stay calm anymore. If Jiang Chengxuan were to take one more step, he would truly complete the staircase of inner inquiry test. As the first person to complete the test, what he would receive at that time, none of them knew. But it would definitely not be something ordinary. Even Xiao Shenkong and others who were originally focused and fully absorbed in climbing the staircase seemed to have sensed something. Their expressions all changed drastically. How could he? At the same time, Jiang Chengxuan, who was on the 499th step, suddenly opened his eyes. He turned around and gave a faint smile to the people behind him. Without any hesitation, he then took a step and stepped onto the 500th step. Boom! In that instant, the entire staircase of inner inquiry shook with a tremor. Everyone clearly saw a colorful portal opening towards Jiang Chengxuan. And this time, everyone was certain that it was not any illusory object, but a real, tangible, colorful portal. What lay behind that colorful portal, however, remained unknown. Curiosity about what lay behind that portal filled everyone's minds. They all wanted to find out. But at this moment, Jiang Chengxuan showed no hesitation. He stepped forward, and his figure immediately disappeared behind the colorful portal, vanishing from everyone's sight. Damn it! The cultivators from Eastern End and Central Plain, and the various demon lords all had very ugly expressions on their faces. In contrast, those close to Jiang Chengxuan like Shen Ruyan and others were all smiling. Even Blue Moon and her companion, a cultivator named Taoist Kong Ming, cupped their fists and congratulated Shen Ruyan and the others. At the same time, as Jiang Chengxuan crossed the colorful portal, he arrived in an ancient palace. Inside the palace, a man adorned in a robe embroidered with 100 heavenly dragons stood there quietly. Jiang Chengxuan's eyes narrowed. However, before he could react, the man turned around. This person was handsome and exuded an otherworldly aura. Upon seeing Jiang Chengxuan enter, a warm smile appeared on his face. "You've arrived." Jiang Chengxuan was extremely shocked. This was because he would never have thought that he would actually meet the master of this place, Sage Dragonmaster. As if sensing Jiang Chengxuan's shock, Sage Dragonmaster could not help but smile. "You need not be so surprised. My true self ascended to the higher realms 10,000 years ago. What remains here is merely a shadow of my consciousness." A shadow of consciousness? Jiang Chengxuan was even more shocked. He hadn't imagined that a person's consciousness shadow could exist for so long. Moreover, in appearance and aura, it seemed hardly different from the real person. Could it be that cultivators, upon breaking through to void returning, all possess such incredible abilities? As if seeing through Jiang Chengxuan's confusion, Sage Dragonmaster chuckled again and said, "The reason this consciousness shadow of mine can exist for so long is because of the array of this ruined site. Otherwise, even as a void returning cultivator, let alone a consciousness shadow, even a separated avatar wouldn't be able to exist for so long." I see. Jiang Chengxuan was enlightened. However, new doubts quickly arose in his mind. If it was the array of this ruined site that allowed this consciousness shadow to exist for so long, then what level was the actual array of this ruined site? But this time, the consciousness shadow of Sage Dragonmaster did not answer his question. Instead, he shifted the topic to Jiang Chengxuan himself. Since you were able to pass through the staircase of inner inquiry and appear here, it means that your aptitude, comprehension, temperament, and potential are all very good. Especially your temperament, which is quite admirable. Given this, there are some things that I can entrust to you. As he spoke, a strange, silver stone appeared in the hand of Sage Dragonmaster. Seeing this stone, Jiang Chengxuan's eyes once again showed a hint of confusion. With his experience and knowledge, he had no idea what this stone was that Sage Dragonmaster now held. Sage Dragonmaster seemed to have no intention of keeping him guessing. He immediately said, "This stone is known as the Realm Resonance Stone. Just place this object on the ascension platform in the lower realm, and it will resonate with the higher realms. Within a short period of time, the ascension platform will be bathed in the light of ascension. At that time, as long as a cultivator's cultivation reaches the late stage of soul transformation, they will be able to withstand the pressure of ascension and ascend to the higher realms." Such an incredible object. Jiang Chengxuan was profoundly shocked. He never dreamed that there would be such a thing in the possession of Sage Dragonmaster. The Realm Resonance Stone. Isn't this the only hope for their ascension? As if sensing Jiang Chengxuan's thoughts, Sage Dragonmaster's expression became more serious. He continued, "Although having this Realm Resonance Stone, combined with an ascension platform in the lower realm, allows cultivators to attempt ascension to the higher realms, there is one condition. The ascension platform in the lower realm must be in good condition. Otherwise, let alone attracting the light of ascension, even the resonance with the higher realms will not be possible." With that, Sage Dragonmaster paused for a moment before adding, "According to my calculations, not long from now, the entire dustless lower sphere's ascension passageway might encounter an accident. The 9 essences cultivation world will face a great calamity. If you wish to ascend to the higher realms, in addition to needing this realm resonance stone in my hand, you must also find a way to repair the ascension platform." Sage Dragonmaster's ability to predict future events deeply shocked Jiang Chengxuan. Being able to foresee changes thousands, or even tens of thousands of years ahead, was incredible. And where exactly was this ascension platform he mentioned? Jiang Chengxuan had never heard of it before. Even Shen Ruyan seemed not to be very clear about this matter. Most importantly, according to the words of Sage Dragonmaster, it seemed that the ascension platform of their 9 essences cultivation world had long been damaged. If he and Shen Ruyan wished to ascend in the future, their first task would be to repair that ascension platform. "May I ask, Senior Dragonmaster, where is the ascension platform of our 9 essences cultivation world currently located? If we wish to repair it, how should we go about it?" Jiang Chengxuan immediately asked Sage Dragonmaster with a serious expression and a respectful bow. Seeing Jiang Chengxuan's reaction, Sage Dragonmaster nodded approvingly. "Worthy of someone who passed the staircase of inner inquiry, your temperament is indeed incomparable to ordinary people." Sage Dragonmaster was well aware that, for most people, the revelations he had just shared might have led to despair, or at least hesitation and fear of facing reality. However, Jiang Chengxuan was different from the ordinary. His primary concern was the most critical aspect, the ascension platform and the corresponding method of repair. At that moment, Sage Dragonmaster produced another item, a jade slip. He said, "Young friend, I've already recorded the location of the ascension platform in the 9 essences cultivation world and the corresponding repair method in this jade slip. If you truly intend to do so, you can follow the instructions recorded in this jade slip to find the location of the ascension platform and attempt to repair it. This is a matter that would benefit countless cultivators in this world. Should you succeed, you would acquire tremendous merit. I no longer have the time for such endeavors. Thus, I leave these items as a way to repay the nurturing of this world. I also promise you that if you succeed, I, Dragonmaster, will owe you a great favor. Should you ascend to the higher realm and need assistance, I will surely not refuse." After saying this, Sage Dragonmaster pushed the jade slip and the realm resonance stone towards Jiang Chengxuan. Jiang Chengxuan, without any hesitation, accepted these items. He understood that his greatest gain from entering this ruin was not only passing the staircase of inner inquiry, which elevated his temperament and gave him a clear direction for his future path, but also acquiring the jade slip and the realm resonance stone from Sage Dragonmaster. The latter allowed him to know the future of the cultivators of the 9 essences cultivation world. At least he had a clear goal and hope. He was no longer at a loss. Even after he cultivated to the late-stage soul formation, he still knew what to do. Furthermore, take these small gifts as a gift from me. Suddenly, Sage Dragonmaster waved his hand. 3 streams of light instantly fell into Jiang Chengxuan's hands. They were a celestial stardust, a nearly transparent flame, and a level 6 heavenly earth spiritual root. The celestial stardust was a top level 6 earth elemental treasure. A single grain weighs as much as a miniature star. It is a crucial material for Jiang Chengxuan at the moment. With it, his deep earth halberd could advance to level 6 pure Yang true treasure. The nearly transparent flame is also immensely beneficial for Jiang Chengxuan. It is the pure yin true fire. With it, his yin and yang divine flame divine power would truly undergo a transformation. If he threw it into the eternal scorching sun furnace, if he operated it well, there was even a chance that his eternal scorching sun furnace would undergo a transformation. As for the last level, 6 heavenly earth spiritual root, it is the longevity peach tree, blooming every 1,000 years, fruiting in 1,000 years, and maturing in 1,000 years. A cultivator consuming its fruit can instantly gain 3,600 years of lifespan. Although each cultivator can only consume this longevity peach fruit once in their lifetime, the 3,600 years of lifespan it grants surpasses any other life-extending spiritual item. With it, his loved ones could perhaps accompany him and Shen Ruyan for a much longer time. Storing these 3 items, Jiang Chengxuan then bowed to Sage Dragonmaster in gratitude. Thank you, Elder Dragonmaster, for bestowing these treasures. I wonder if Elder has any sects left outside. If so, perhaps you could tell me. If there's a need, I will definitely do my best to protect it. Hearing Jiang Chengxuan's words, Sage Dragonmaster couldn't help but smile and shake his head. After a myriad of years, even if I had left sects, they might no longer exist. But since you asked with such intention, I won't be formal with you. 10,000 years ago, in the 9 Essences cultivation world, I indeed left a sect. It is called the Tian sect. If this sect still exists, you might, depending on the situation, offer some assistance. If it no longer exists or has strayed into evil paths, you can cleanse the sect for me. Much appreciated. After these final words, the figure of Sage Dragonmaster began to fade, until he completely disappeared. Upon seeing this, Jiang Chengxuan respectfully bowed towards the direction where Sage Dragonmaster had disappeared. In the following time, Jiang Chengxuan didn't rush to leave. Instead, he sat down cross-legged on the spot and took out the jade slip from Sage Dragonmaster, pressing it against his forehead. Soon, a stream of information related to the location of the ascension platform and the method to repair it flooded into his mind. However, what made Jiang Chengxuan frown was the fact that the location of the ascension platform was in the central plane. Moreover, the method to repair it required several extremely precious and rare items, particularly the mystic color stone and celestial flight crystal. According to the jade slip, these items were not found in the 9 Essences cultivation world, but in other cultivation worlds within the dustless lower sphere. This meant that if Jiang Chengxuan wanted to repair the ascension platform, he would need to find an opportunity to travel to other cultivation worlds within the dustless lower sphere, which was a considerably difficult task. It was because it was very dangerous for cultivators in the cultivation world of the 9 Essences to go to other cultivation worlds. After all, there was an extremely powerful enemy outside their world. It was almost impossible for them to go to other cultivation worlds through normal methods or even without alerting the enemy. This was something that perhaps Sage Dragonmaster had not expected. Therefore, there were only 2 methods for Jiang Chengxuan to leave the 9 Essences cultivation world and travel to other cultivation worlds. One was using the cross-realm array platform found in the ruin that day, and the other was utilizing the cross-realm talisman he had obtained from the system. Other than these, there seemed to be no other way. It appeared that he would have to reconsider his options once he left this place. For now, Jiang Chengxuan put away the jade slip and the realm resonance stone and began to reflect deeply on his experiences on the staircase of inner inquiry. Slowly, Jiang Chengxuan's aura began to change, and his cultivation level quietly advanced to the 3rd level of soul formation, wise. Moreover, it was still increasing at a speed that ordinary people could imagine. Until many days later, When his cultivation level reached the peak of the third level of soul formation, the changes in his aura gradually slowed down. At the same time, on the staircase, Shen Ruyan had also impressively reached the 498th step. This achievement shocked and amazed everyone present. The couple's exceptional temperament was evident. Looking at Shen Ruyan, it was only a matter of time before she reached the 500th step. At this moment, the eyes of the soul formation cultivators of the eastern end and central plane, as well as the demon sovereigns, lit up with an extremely cold light. They were deeply aware of a problem. Absolutely, 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 absolutely not. They could not let the couple continue to grow. If they continued to grow, needless to say, they would definitely call the shot in the future 9 essences cultivation world. At that time, no one present would have a good outcome. Therefore, they had to get rid of them before it came to that. For this reason, even if the human and demon races had to join forces, they would not hesitate. Unknowingly, Xiao Shenkong, Taoist Wu Xin, Elder Black Tortoise, Demon Sovereign Ink Dragon, and the others looked at each other in tacit understanding. It was as if they could see determination in each other's eyes. They intended to strike after the expedition in the ruin, ideally right outside the ruin, to ambush and eliminate the couple. This secretive plotting did not escape the notice of some of the other observant participants. Figures like Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, Dongfang Tianxing, and Blue Moon perceived the unspoken conspiracy brewing between the two parties. This realization filled them with anger and a sense of danger. If Xiao Shenkong and the others really wanted to join forces with Elder Black Tortoise, and the others to launch a surprise attack on Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan after leaving the ruin, it would undoubtedly be the most dangerous situation the couple had ever faced. Despite acknowledging the couple's extraordinary abilities, it was undeniable that among those who entered the ruin this time, there were cultivators and demon sovereigns with strength not inferior to theirs, especially those who had reached the peak of the mid-stage of soul transformation. Facing such powerful opponents, even if Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan wanted to escape, it would be extremely difficult unless they could further advance their cultivation or strength. What to do? Should they inform Shen Ruyan of this looming threat? At that moment, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, Dongfang Tianxing, and even Blue Moon started to discuss with each other. Ultimately, Heavenly Lord Xuan Yang, who knew Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan best, suggested not to disturb them for now. They decided to wait for the couple to come out of the staircase of inner inquiry before discussing the matter further. Buzz. At the same time, just as Shen Ruyan ascended the 498th step, she suddenly leaped up 2 steps and finally reached the 500th step. Whoosh! Like Jiang Chengxuan before her, as Shen Ruyan stepped onto the 500th step, a colorful portal appeared in front of her. Without hesitation, she stepped through and vanished into the portal. Buzz. Passing through felt like crossing a barrier. When Shen Ruyan looked again, she found that she had arrived in a simple and unadorned hall. There were murals engraved all around the hall. On those murals, there seemed to be some ancient historical scenes recorded. Floating in front of the hall were 3 glowing orbs, each containing a treasure. These included a lightning stone with 5-element attributes, a lightning cluster with destructive properties, and a palm-sized jade slip flickering with lightning. Shen Ruyan withdrew her gaze from the 3 light orbs and looked elsewhere in the hall. However, what puzzled her was that after observation, she did not see her husband, Jiang Chengxuan. How could this be? Could it be that they were not in the same space? This was really very possible. If that was the case, the couple might have to wait for the rules of this place to send them out if they wanted to meet again. At that thought, Shen Ruyan decided not to waste any more time. She arrived in front of the 3 orbs and reached out to touch them one by one. Soon, the 3 orbs turned into 3 streaks of light and merged into Shen Ruyan's body. And these are... Shen Ruyan's eyes widened. She couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Especially the jade slip that flickered with lightning. It was something that could help her perfect her cultivation technique. After all, at present, her cultivation technique could only be practiced to the peak of the mid-stage of soul formation. She couldn't advance any further. However, with the jade slip flashing with lightning, combining its contents, she could further perfect her own cultivation technique. At that time, not to mention the late stage of soul formation, Even reaching void returning was within Shen Ruyan's grasp. As for the other two items, one could elevate her falling thunder heavenly seal again. The other item would allow her cultivation and divine powers to improve once again. Recalling the reactions of Xiao Shenkong and the other demon sovereigns before she entered this place, Shen Ruyan's eyes flashed. Without hesitation, she took out her gains from the ruin and started cultivating. Time passed day by day. Shen Ruyan had been cultivating here for decades. Her cultivation level had actually broken through from the 3rd level to the 4th level, stepping firmly into the mid-stage of this realm. At the same time, her intrinsic true treasures, the 5 lightning immortal slayer and falling thunder heavenly seal, were also elevated to the pure yang true treasure level. Her various divine powers also greatly increased in might. At this point, Shen Ruyan was confident she could instantly annihilate her past self. She wondered about her husband's situation. Was he, like her, experiencing significant improvements here? Meanwhile, in another place, Jiang Chengxuan successfully used the true blood ginseng to elevate his physical cultivation to level 6. In addition, his deep earth halberd had successfully entered the ranks of pure yang true treasures after fusing with the celestial stardust, including his yin and yang divine flame divine power. After combining the 2 heavenly flames of pure yang and pure yin, its power had already surpassed ordinary trigram divine fire. It had become Jiang Chengxuan's strongest fire divine power so far. Ding! At this moment, a familiar system notification suddenly appeared in Jiang Chengxuan's mind. Congratulations, host. You have reached level 6 body tempering. You have obtained the void returning content of the infinite wheel. You have obtained the physical body divine power, blood rebirth. Physical body divine power, blood rebirth. As long as the host's primordial spirit is not destroyed, you can be reborn even if there's only a drop of blood left. Note, with the host's current realm, the divine power blood rebirth can only be used once a day. In the future, as the host's physical body realm increases, the number of times it can be used will correspondingly increase. Jiang Chengxuan really did not expect to receive such a huge reward after breaking through to level 6 body tempering. There was no need to talk about the void returning content of the infinite wheel. Just that blood rebirth was definitely a very powerful life-saving trump card. Most importantly, this divine power would increase in number as his body tempering cultivation increased in the future. It was definitely a very rare reward. Despite his cultivation not breaking through to the mid-stage of soul formation, Jiang Chengxuan now had the confidence to battle even those in the late stage of soul formation with his current strength. He calculated the time. Jiang Chengxuan was surprised to discover that it had taken him decades to break through to level 6 of body tempering. He did not know what the situation outside was like. He did not know if those people were still in the ruin. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Jiang Chengxuan suddenly felt a repelling force suddenly appear on his body. This is a time to leave the ruin. Buzz. In an instant, Jiang Chengxuan felt his body enveloped by an irresistible force, leading to a dizzy sensation. When he regained his senses, he found himself outside the ruin, alongside his wife Shen Ruyan. In addition, Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, Heavenly Lord Infinite Ocean, Dongfeng Tianxing, Murong Xian and Blue Moon were all sent out of the ruin. Everyone realized that the ruin's opening period had ended. Regardless of one's location inside, the ruin would automatically expel everyone once the time was up. They just did not know when this ruin would open again. After all, anyone who could enter the ruin this time would more or less have some good gains. Wait. Suddenly, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan sensed something amiss. Their expressions changed slightly. This was because they suddenly realized that only a few dozen days had passed in this real world. However, they remembered it clearly. They had clearly spent decades to break through their cultivation. Could it be that the time flow and the space that the two of them had entered was different from the outside world? Without saying a word, the couple exchanged glances, understanding each other's thoughts. Fellow Taoist Jiang, fellow Taoist Shen, let's leave this place quickly. At this moment, they heard Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang's voice transmission. Both of them were puzzled. Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang continued. Right after you entered the colorful portal of the staircase of inner inquiry, the people from the eastern end and the central plane allied with the demon race, planning to jointly ambush and kill you both. Ambush and kill us. Hearing Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang's words, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were both taken aback. They never expected that the people from the eastern end and the central plane would choose to cooperate with the demon race. This was no different from betraying their own race. Even if there were great conflicts or grudges among them, they should have resolved them internally. Inviting outsiders, especially enemies, was unthinkable. Were they foolish? At this moment, both Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan's expressions turned slightly ugly. It seemed that the eastern end and the central plane had abandoned all rules in their efforts to deal with them. In that case, there was nothing more to say. They might as well take this opportunity to end it once and for all. In any case, they were eager to test their own strength and see who would ultimately be the victor. Instantly, the couple reached a tacit understanding and quickly gained a complete understanding of each other's gains from their recent experiences. Swoosh, swoosh. At the same time, in the sky, suddenly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13. There were a total of 13 soul formation cultivators. They appeared near Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. These people were either cultivators from the eastern end and the central plane or demon sovereigns from the demon race. Strangely, these normally antagonistic groups were now united, led by 4 particularly formidable figures. They were the heavenly lords from the central plane, Xiao Taisheng and Skyblade, as well as Ink Dragon and Golden Eagle. These 4 had all reached the 6th level of soul formation. Among them, Skyblade had only advanced to soul formation 60 years ago. Although he had the least experience among the 4 of them, his combat strength as a saber cultivation was not inferior to the other veteran mid-stage soul formation cultivators at all. As for Xiao Taisheng, he was the ancestor of Xiao Shenkong, Xiao Shenji, and the others. Everyone looked at Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. The tangible and invisible auras had already locked onto the couple. Even though they were soul formation heavenly lords and had comprehended a trace of spatial laws, they couldn't escape the restraint of their auras. They really think highly of us. Jiang Chengxuan suddenly chuckled. However, Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, and Heavenly Lord Infinite Ocean looked grim. They hadn't anticipated their opponents would act so quickly. They had barely left the ruin when these people had already appeared before them. Fellow Taoist Jiang, fellow Taoist Shen, the 3 of us will do our best to hold them back later. Go as far as you can. As long as you can leave, there will still be hope for our northern border and even the human race in the future. Don't be rash, and don't let your emotions affect your decisions. At that moment, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain suddenly sent a voice transmission to Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. At this moment, they did not expect Dongfeng Tianxing and Murong Xian to help. At the end of the day, the relationship between the 2 sides was just an alliance. Under such a situation, it was normal for the 2 of them to choose to stand by and do nothing. At least, think about it from another perspective. Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain and the others might do the same if they were in their shoes. Therefore, the only ones they could count on now were themselves. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were both surprised by Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain's voice transmission. However, on second thought, they didn't find it strange. After all, none of them knew the changes in the 2 of them. It was normal to have such pessimistic thoughts. However, at this moment, the couple clearly did not have much time to explain in detail to them. All they could do was to generally inform them about some situations, so they didn't need to worry. This included informing Dongfeng Tianxing and Murong Xian. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan even tried to win over Blue Moon and her companion, Kong Ming. After all, the more people on their side, the greater the likelihood of annihilating all their enemies. Boom! Just as Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan finished transmitting their messages, Skyblade, Xiao Taisheng, Ink Dragon, and Golden Eagle simultaneously made their move on the opposite side. Joining them were Xiao Shenkong, Elder Black Tortoise, and the others. However, their target was not Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan, but Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain and his group. Rumble! In that instant, the entire Death Desert seemed to have been turned upside down. Rings of energy waves capable of annihilating anything continuously spread rapidly in all directions. Looking down from above, one could see at the center of these terrifying energy ripples, there was a small circle of ripples that were pitch black, slowly expanding. This was nothing else but a spatial black hole formed by the collision of both sides, shattering the space. In that black hole, all light, energy, and matter would be instantly annihilated upon approach, leaving nothing behind. Fortunately, this place was the death desert, devoid of spiritual veins and not many living beings. Otherwise, Jiang Chengxuan and the others might have had to bear countless karma. Jiang Chengxuan, Shen Ruyan, you disrespect the higher realms, disregard the ancestral teachings, and are insanely cruel, conspiring with traitors to slay our central plane's heavenly lords. Such actions are utterly rebellious and deserving of heavenly punishment, doomed forever. Today, we shall act on behalf of the heavens to restore peace to the world. At that moment, Xiao Taixing from the Central Plain's Great Ling Imperial Palace transformed into a 100-foot-tall Dharma form. Majestic and towering, he looked down coldly at Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan and others, making a solemn and authoritative judgment. This made Jiang Chengxuan, Shen Ruyan, and others who heard his words feel disgusted. People from the Great Ling Imperial Palace were always so hypocritical, always trying to give themselves a righteous label. Right or wrong, didn't they have any idea in their own hearts? Boom! The response to Xiao Taixing was a massive halberd radiance sweeping in from afar, carrying a momentum that seemed to smash everything, and it quickly reached in front of him. Stubborn and unenlightened, coldness flashed in Xiao Taixing's eyes. His huge Dharma form raised its hand and waved. With a whoosh, a shield entwined with 9 fire dragons appeared in front of him. This was his intrinsic defensive treasure, the 9 Dragons Flame Shield. It contained 9 types of flames including Dragon Flame, Flying Flame, Underworld Flame, and Earth Flame. Although not all were heavenly flames, their power had reached an unimaginable level, capable of blocking any attack below the late stage of soul formation. In that instant, a blindingly bright flame lit up the space between heaven and earth. The collision of forces, as if occurring in a separate space, initially made no sound. It wasn't until much later that a sound like the sky collapsing and the earth splitting thunderously burst open in the sky. There was a crack. A small circular black hole suddenly appeared in the void, with chaotic and violent energies rampaging within it. At the same time, the originally fiercely burning 9 Dragons Flame Shield suddenly emitted a mournful cry. The figures of the 9 fire dragons on it began to dim and even showed signs of collapsing. How is that possible? Xiao Taixing's eyes shot out 2 beams of astonished light, his face showing utter disbelief. Boom! However, what answered him again was a halberd light that was even larger than before. Tearing through heaven and earth, it seemed to descend from the 9th heavens, intent on suppressing everything. Most importantly, Xiao Taixing felt as if the space around him had solidified. He was like an insect trapped in amber, unable to move. Bang! Waves of energy surged. A white wave that was like a tsunami soared into the sky. Xiao Taixing, who was in the middle, immediately spat out blood and flew back. His body emitted a series of crackling sounds, as his bones and internal organs were crushed into fragments at that moment. Such an injury would have been fatal for an ordinary cultivator, even those at nascent soul, leading to the collapse of their physical body. But for a soul formation heavenly lord, it was not deadly, merely a severe injury. Yet this was enough to astound Xiao Taixing, Skyblade, Ink Dragon, and Golden Eagle. Crack! In their moment of shock, a stroke of lightning wrapped in the 5 elements shot out from Shen Ruyan's hand towards the nearest Golden Eagle. UB starred. Golden Eagle roared in anger. His narrow eyes flashed with a cold sharpness. He opened his mouth and spat out. There was a whoosh. A golden, barbed hook shot out, clashing with Shen Ruyan's 5 elemental lightning. Rumble! A massive explosion rose in the sky. The lightning infused with the 5 elements raged and roared, gradually wearing down the golden brilliance on the hook. The Golden Eagle's eyes immediately narrowed. Without a moment's hesitation, he slapped the back of his head. There was a buzz. A golden spear, wrapped in faint golden lightning, shot out, clashing again with Shen Ruyan's lightning. HMPH. Shen Ruyan snorted coldly. In the next moment, she lightly waved her hand. The 5 lightning immortal slayer was instantly summoned by her. Clang, 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 a series of sounds followed. The golden spear wielded by the Golden Eagle vibrated incessantly. This also caused the dharmic power within the demon sovereign to surge wildly. He glared at Ink Dragon and Skyblade, shouting. What are you two waiting for? If not now, when? Swoosh. Skyblade instantly turned into a blade of light. He merged with his saber and slashed directly at Shen Ruyan. At the same time, Ink Dragon waved his hand. Suddenly, 18 blue water dragons appeared in the void. Snarling and roaring, they all charged towards Jiang Chengxuan. Hello. Faced with the attack from the man and dragon, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan merely laughed lightly. Immediately, their auras began to rise limitlessly. Jiang Chengxuan's cultivation level instantly reached the peak of the 3rd level of soul formation. Combined with his level 6 body tempering cultivation, he instantly created an extremely terrifying oppressive pressure. Shen Ruyan didn't hold back at all. Her cultivation, which was originally suppressed by her, was instantly released. In one step, she entered the mid-stage of soul formation. This horrifying aura immediately caused everyone present to change their expressions drastically. Their cultivation levels. Boom! Before Xiao Taisheng, Golden Eagle, Skyblade, and Ink Dragon could react. Even more terrifying attacks suddenly erupted from Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. Jiang Chengxuan fiercely opened his fingers towards the 18 water dragons charging at him and clenched them. Earth Elemental Divine Power, Sky Burial. Splash, splash, splash. At this moment, countless rocks appeared out of thin air. The 18 water dragons charging at Jiang Chengxuan were like heads crashing into their own graves. The grave quickly closed. In the blink of an eye, the 18 water dragons turned into 18 tombstones. As Jiang Chengxuan stretched his hand and clenched it again, there was a rumble. The 18 tombstones instantly shattered into dust and dissipated. At the same time, Shen Ruyan raised her hand toward the sky and tossed. Rumble! The falling thunder heavenly seal instantly transformed into a vast cloud. Immediately afterwards, endless thunderbolts carrying a destructive aura struck down. Skyblade, who was slashing at Shen Ruyan, saw his surrounding blade light shattered inch by inch. His forward charge gradually turned into a retreat. He was continuously struck back by the endless thunderbolts. Swoosh! At this moment, a 5-colored brilliance suddenly swept across the entire battlefield. In an instant, all the enemies present felt an overwhelming sense of fatigue from deep within, as if they hadn't slept for days. Some even began to see patches of snowflakes in their vision. This was the effect of Jiang Chengxuan's intrinsic divine power, the 5-colored divine light. However, he was not using the 5-colored divine light that could suppress the 5 elements in the world. Instead, he was using the 5-colored divine light that could reduce his opponent's strength by 30%. Boom! Seizing this opportunity, Jiang Chengxuan once again wielded his deep earth halberd. With a loud clang, Xiao Taisheng's 9 dragons' flame shield was smashed away. Even the approaching Ink Dragon was sent flying hundreds of miles away with a single strike. Oh yeah? Ink Dragon spat out a mouthful of blood, but that was not the worst part. Jiang Chengxuan's eyes were cold and ruthless. His entire being, spirit, chi, and essence reached its peak at that moment. His deep earth halberd buzzed excitedly. Under Xiao Taisheng's horrified gaze, a single strike from the halberd shattered his physical body, turning him into a mass of flesh and blood. Swoosh! Just as Xiao Taisheng's primordial spirit attempted to escape, Jiang Chengxuan coldly commanded. Seal it. Crack. Instantly, the previously terrible void solidified like a wall or iron barrier, unmovable regardless of Xiao Taisheng's efforts. Arg! Xiao Taisheng screamed in terror as the deep earth halberd, now like a giant pillar, crushed down on his primordial spirit. Accompanied by an intense spiritual chi tsunami, Xiao Taisheng's primordial spirit had already been pulverized by Jiang Chengxuan. What? The scene immediately shocked everyone present. But before they could recover from their astonishment, a sharp and piercing screech resounded through the high skies. Above them, a giant bathed in lightning suddenly reached out and firmly grasped the true form of the golden eagle. Then the giant tore it apart forcefully. Accompanied by a loud tearing sound, the huge body of the golden eagle was torn into two by the lightning giant. Then countless bolts of lightning fell from the clouds. In an instant, the golden eagle's escaping primordial spirit was bombarded into pieces. Whoosh! Following that, a massive surge of spiritual chi once again swept through the area. Everyone stood still, almost stupefied, staring at the body of the golden eagle that had plummeted from the sky. A peak mid-stage soul formation cultivator, and a peak mid-stage level 6 demon sovereign had fallen just like that. What kind of monsters were this couple? Die! Suddenly, another thunderous shout echoed from the sky. Xianxia and Shen Ruyan each charged towards Skyblade and Ink Dragon. The others at the scene also snapped to their senses. Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, Heavenly Lord Infinite Ocean, and Heavenly Lord Xuan Yang immediately attacked with all their might to suppress Xiao Shenkang and the others. On the other side, Dongfeng Tangxing and Murong Xian looked at each other. Then they all rushed towards Heavenly Lord Qian Yun, Taoist Shang Tong, and the others. Finally, Blue Moon and her companion Kong Ming didn't stand idly either. The two, one in the front and one in the back, jointly confronted Ink Dragon and Elder Black Tortoise. Rumble! An even more intense battle erupted instantly. Skyblade and Ink Dragon were immediately put at a disadvantage under the full-force onslaught of Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. At this moment, Ink Dragon suddenly proposed a truce. Both of you, how about we stop here? One can assure you, and even swear a Tao oath, that for the next 1,000 years, our demon race will not invade your human race again. Hearing Ink Dragon's words, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan smirked contemptuously. Not invade our human race. What makes you think that after this, your demon race will still have the qualification to negotiate such terms with our human race? Ink Dragon's face changed dramatically. What do you mean? Do you think that with your current strength you can completely suppress or even crush our demon race? Don't forget, within our demon race, there are other peak mid-stage level 6 demon sovereigns. So what? Jiang Chengxuan's expression became indifferent. Even if your demon race has twice as many peak mid-stage level 6 demon sovereigns as today, it would just take a bit more effort to deal with them. Thinking you can leverage this to threaten us is simply daydreaming. With that, Jiang Chengxuan's figure suddenly shone with golden light. With a swish, a long golden line appeared in the high sky. Seeing this golden line, Ink Dragon's face turned pale. Buzz! Suddenly, a pagoda made entirely of dragon bones appeared in front of Ink Dragon. Bang! However, to Ink Dragon's horror, his black dragon pagoda, when facing Jiang Chengxuan's metal-elemental divine power, light cut, lasted less than half a moment before collapsing and plummeting downward. No! Just as Ink Dragon let out a cry, his entire body was sliced in two by the golden line. Whoosh! In the sky, the body of an ink dragon that was tens of thousands of feet long was split into two. Then a much smaller ink dragon flew out of the huge ink dragon's body. It was the primordial spirit of the ink dragon. At this moment, its eyes were filled with fear. As soon as it appeared, it frantically tried to tear through the void in front of it to escape. However, to its shock and even despair, the void in front of it was as unyielding as a steel plate, immovable no matter how hard it tried. Whoosh! At that moment, a flag radiating green light enveloped Ink Dragon's primordial spirit. This flag, shrouded in a mysterious aura, wrapped up Ink Dragon's primordial spirit in an instant. With the primordial spirit of Ink Dragon, the power of my Eastern Green Dragon flag might even ascend another level. This thought flashed across Jiang Chengxuan's mind. The next second, his gaze turned towards Skyblade, who was trying to escape. Boom! Thunder and blade light raged. At this moment, Shen Ruyan was already locked in combat again with Skyblade. In just a moment, Skyblade was forced into a losing state. As the thin layer of blade aura in front of Skyblade was about to be engulfed by the endless thunder, Skyblade's figure suddenly grew immensely. In the blink of an eye, a small golden figure suddenly leaped out of the immense body. The space rippled, and the golden figure broke through the layers of space, about to leave the battlefield while taking advantage of the chaos. HMPH. But just then, a cold snort echoed in the ears of the golden figure, causing a momentary delay in his escape. That slight delay allowed a bolt of lightning to catch up from behind, and with a crackling sound, the lightning pierced through the golden figure's body. Under his extremely unwilling gaze, his body exploded into pieces on the spot. At the same time, a streak of golden sword light swiftly passed through the Dharma form of Skyblade, cutting it in half in midair. The Dharma form dissolved into a sea of spiritual chi and vanished. With this, all four peak mid-stage soul formation combatants who came after the couple had fallen. This scene instilled great fear in Xiao Shenkang, Xiao Shenji, Wu Xin, Taoist Shang Tong, Heavenly Lord Qian Yun, Elder Black Tortoise, and others. Realizing that even the four peak mid-stage Heavenly Lords had fallen at the hands of Jiang Chengxuan and his wife, they understood that if they didn't flee, they might meet the same fate. Thinking of this, Xiao Shenkong and the others no longer dared to stay. They started to flee desperately. Swish, swish. But at that moment, two streaks of sword light cut through the void, landing directly on Xiao Shenji and Taoist Shang Tong, who had only their primordial spirit left and no physical bodies. Their expressions froze instantly. They stood still, and their bodies began to disintegrate, eventually turning into two spirals of spiritual qi that dispersed in all directions. Don't let them escape. At this moment, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, Heavenly Lord Infinite Ocean, and Heavenly Lord Chu and Yang also went all out, desperately blocking Xiao Shenkong and the others. Seeing this, Dongfeng Tianxing, Murong Xian, along with Blue Moon and Kong Ming, clearly knew that this was the critical moment. The future possibility of breaking the two great mountains of the eastern end, and the central plain would depend on how many soul formation cultivators they could kill now. An even more intense battle erupted than at the beginning. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were like the kings in this battlefield. Everywhere they went, their opponents would collapse in a very short time. Huge waves of spiritual qi constantly surged around them. In just a short while, Heavenly Lord Qian Yun and Wu Xin fell under the combined forces. The remaining Xiao Shenkong, Elder Black Tortoise, and others knew that if this continued, their chances of escaping were minuscule. Therefore, in the next moment, Xiao Shenkong, Elder Black Tortoise, and the others began to burn their essence, breaking through the void, trying to find a slim chance of survival. Dong! Elder Black Tortoise took out a bright yellow steel from his hand, emitting an incredibly thick earthy aura. This was the Howd protective steel, made from the earth of profound virtue, a top-notch defensive treasure. Elder Black Tortoise wanted to use this treasure to buy them enough time to escape. Seeing this, Jiang Chengxuan's lips curled into a cold smile. The five-colored radiance behind him appeared again. There was a whoosh. The Howd protective steel, which was originally standing in front of Elder Black Tortoise, vanished into thin air. To his horror, Elder Black Tortoise found that his connection with the steel was completely severed. How come? What kind of divine power was that just now? How could it take away my treasure and completely sever my connection with it? As Elder Black Tortoise was shocked by the sudden turn of events, a black and white thunderbolt, with the center containing blue, red, yellow, white, and green thunders, thundered down towards all of them. This was Shen Ruyan's ultimate divine power, the great yin-yang five elements divine thunder, capable of annihilating everything, reversing the universe, and destroying the void. It was currently her most powerful divine power in terms of destructive force. No! Elder Black Tortoise and the others screamed in terror. But the response to their scream was a tremendous roar. Rumble! Instantly, a swirl of black and white thunder soared into the sky. A huge mushroom cloud transformed into rings expanding in all directions. In the center of the explosion, apart from Xiao Shenkong and Elder Black Tortoise, the others, physical bodies and primordial spirits, were instantly annihilated. Even they were severely injured, with only their damaged primordial spirits desperately hanging on. Whoosh! At this moment, a golden sword light once again burst forth in their eyes. The remaining person and demon screamed in horror. Spare us, spare us. We are willing to serve you as masters as long as you let us go this time. Serve us as masters, sorry not needed. With a cold voice falling, the golden sword light swiftly swept across Xiao Shenkong and Elder Black Tortoise's shattered primordial spirits, completely eradicating their last traces in this world. Rustle! Suddenly, a continuous spiritual rain began to fall from the sky, nourishing everything and blessing the land. It was clear to the naked eye that the environment, which had been ravaged by their battle, was rapidly recovering. Even in the Death Desert, a hint of greenery miraculously appeared and started to expand. This is the return of cultivators, Tao to nature. Cultivators cultivated by absorbing the spiritual foundation of the world. However, most cultivators only knew how to absorb and not give back. As time passed, the spiritual foundation of the world would definitely decline and even dry up. This was also a sign that in many cultivation worlds, at the later stages of the world, there would be many dharma ending signs. just like the Earth where Jiang Chengxuan was in his previous life. Humans extract resources without giving back, leading to environmental degradation and ultimately reaping the consequences. In the cultivation world, cultivators, as the most intelligent beings, have the advantage of breaking their own shackles by borrowing from nature. However, how many think of giving back to nature after obtaining benefits from nature? Almost none, including Jiang Chengxuan before his enlightenment. Now, watching the continuous spiritual reign, Jiang Chengxuan's understanding deepened further. He suddenly turned to Shen Ruyan and said, "Ruyan, after this I plan to travel the world, sort out the earth's veins, repair damaged spiritual foundations, enlighten sentient beings and preach the Tao to repay the nurturing grace of this world." Hearing Jiang Chengxuan's words, Shen Ruyan was also moved. She turned to look at her husband and smiled, saying, "Okay, I will join you in this." Soon, the news of what happened here spread like a whirlwind throughout the 9 essences cultivation world. In the central plain, the current emperor of the Great Ling Imperial Palace was infuriated, smashing everything in front of him. He looked at everyone present with a fierce gaze and roared, "How dare they? How dare they?" The hall fell silent. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear. The news was just too shocking. After all, including the Eastern End and the demon race, there were more than 10 soul formation cultivators involved. But in the end, such a formidable force, capable of sweeping across the entire 9 essences cultivation world, had been completely annihilated. How is this possible? Many people present couldn't believe their ears when they first heard the news. They thought either they had heard wrong or the message was mistaken. Nobody wanted to believe it until similar reports spread to other major regions and throughout the entire 9 essences cultivation world. Only then did they truly realize that all of it was indeed true. How were they to proceed in light of this? Xiao Taisheng and the others represented a significant portion of the foundation of both the central plain and the eastern end. With their loss, the foundations of these regions were seriously shaken. What if any mishap occurred at this juncture? Or what if Jiang Chengxuan and his forces directly led an army to attack the Great Ling Imperial Palace? This was also the main reason why the emperor of the Great Ling Imperial Palace lost his composure. His rage was a cover for the unspoken fear in his heart. "Your Majesty." Just then an elder stepped forward from the crowd. He looked at the emperor and spoke with a slightly heavy tone. "What you need to consider now is not what has already happened, but what the Great Ling Imperial Palace and the entire central plain should do next." This man, named Xiao Taiwen, was a contemporary of Xiao Taisheng and also an ancestor of the Great Ling Imperial Palace, a stabilizing figure like a pillar. Reminded by him, the emperor finally came back to his senses. He looked at Xiao Taiwen with gratitude and nodded. Ancestor's instruction is correct. Indeed, we need to consider how to deal with the potential developments that may follow. Having regained his usual dignity, the emperor's gaze swept over everyone present and then continued. "Let's discuss. What should the Great Ling Imperial Palace and the entire central plain do next in response to these events?" Hearing the Great Ling Emperor's question, a silence fell upon the crowd. It wasn't that they didn't want to offer suggestions. Rather, the situation was genuinely tricky. Considering the current circumstances, their side was clearly at a disadvantage. To turn the tables, or even just to protect themselves, would undoubtedly require a tremendous sacrifice. In fact, even if they paid a huge price, they might not be able to obtain their desired goals. This scene made the expression of the emperor, who had just calmed down, turn ugly again. Thankfully, at this moment, Hu Wenchen, an elder from the Myriad Form sect, spoke up. "Your Majesty, in my view, the likelihood of them attacking our central plain should be less than 30%. After all, this is our home ground. Even if Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan are extraordinary, it's impossible for them to break through our arrays here unless they have reached the late stage of soul formation." But is that even possible? At this point, Hu Wenchen could not help but smile smugly. Since ancient times, reaching the mid-stage of soul formation has been extremely rare, and the peak of mid-stage is even rarer. As for reaching the late stage, there has been no one. This isn't due to a lack of effort or talent on our part. It's because the upper limit of this world is only so high. These are the world's rules, and even Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan, no matter how talented, cannot break the shackles of these rules. Thus, what we need to consider is only self-preservation. As soon as he finished speaking, many people present clearly revealed shocked expressions. Apparently, they were unaware of this secret of their world, that the limit of cultivation in the 9 essences cultivation world was only up to the peak of the mid-stage soul formation. Even the most gifted individuals couldn't break these bounds. For a moment, many people's Tao hearts could not help but waver. This was because the impact this had on them was too great. However, those who reacted quickly showed signs of joy on their faces. They realized that if Hu Wenchun's words were true, then self-preservation on their part should be achievable. Most importantly, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan, no matter how strong, wouldn't be able to break the world's limits and advance to the late-stage soul formation. This provided an added layer of security for their future safety. Thinking this, many couldn't hide their joy anymore. Hu Wenchun added, moreover, the situation with the demon race is probably similar to ours. We could take this opportunity to turn our hostility into friendship, or even unite against Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. What? At this point, many people in the room couldn't maintain their composure and showed disbelief on their faces. The idea of allying with the demon race to oppose Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan was shocking. Throughout the countless years, the number of humans who had died at the hands of the demon race was incalculable. The enmity between the two sides seemed almost irreconcilable. And now, the Great Ling Imperial Palace was considering an alliance with the demon race to confront their own heavenly lords. No matter how one looked at it, this matter was extremely ironic. Your Majesty, this may not be appropriate, a man carrying twin spears on his back interjected. He addressed the Great Ling Emperor, saying, if we truly choose to cooperate with the demon race, how do we justify this to our fallen comrades killed by them? How would the cultivators of our central plane, and even the entire 9 essences cultivation world, view us? Most importantly, the demon race has already pledged loyalty to that outer world being. If we collaborate with them, we'll be letting down the heaven and earth of our world. The series of questions immediately silenced many people present. Their eyes were filled with deep thought. Puff. However, Hu Wenchun scoffed disdainfully at this. He looked at the man with the 2 spears on his back and said lightly, aren't you thinking too much, Sun Jian? This matter concerns the life and death of our Great Ling Imperial Palace. In the face of such a situation, those who sacrificed in the past would surely understand our actions, should they be aware. As for how the cultivators of our central plane and the 9 essences cultivation world view us, does it really matter? They are but ants, and since when does a dragon concern itself with the opinion of ants? Sun Jian's expression turned ugly at these words, but before he could retort, Hu Wenchun continued. Remember your identity, Sun Jian. You are first and foremost a general of the Great Ling Imperial Palace, then yourself. Everything must prioritize the interests of our dynasty. As for the demon race allying with an external being, what of it? If they still live well in the 9 essences cultivation world, it suggests that the will of this world is waning. Why should we continue to cling to a dying world? It would be wiser to plan ahead and seek better prospects for ourselves. What do you all think? It had to be said that Hu Wenchun's words were extremely outrageous. Many people present clearly hadn't expected him to propose such an idea openly at this juncture. Was he not afraid of heavenly retribution, or of being driven mad by his own blasphemy? Even the Great Ling Emperor and his ancestor, Xiao Taiwang, looked at Hu Wenchun with surprise. Minister Hu, can you tell me if you really meant what you said? The Great Ling Emperor asked with a deep and probing gaze. Together with Xiao Taiwang, he looked at Hu Wenchun and said calmly, I know you well, and you weren't like this in the past. Humph. Hu Wenchun chuckled lightly, admitting, Your Majesty is indeed insightful and knows me well. These aren't entirely my thoughts. They come from Venerable Hun Tian. Venerable Hun Tian. The mention of Venerable Hun Tian caused everyone's eyes to constrict with apprehension. Just the name itself brought an ominous feeling to the Great Ling Emperor and others. Hell yeah. At that moment, a mocking laughter echoed throughout the Great Ling Imperial Palace. Everyone was shocked to find that a shadowy figure materialized beside Hu Wenchun, gradually taking the form of a man in a black cloak, radiating a malevolent aura. Extraterritorial demonic cultivator. Sun Jian was the first to react. Clang! The two spears on his back suddenly appeared in his hands. The power of a soul formation heavenly lord surged towards the cloaked man, Venerable Hun Tian. Well, Venerable Hun Tian suddenly raised his head. A black light suddenly burst forth from his deep and pitch-black eyes. Sun Jian, who had just made eye contact with him, felt his primordial spirit tremble. In an instant, his mind buzzed and his vision turned black. The two spears that were attacking Venerable Hun Tian suddenly stopped in midair. Venerable, please show mercy. At this moment, the great Ling Emperor's voice suddenly rang out. Venerable Hun Tian, who had restrained Sun Jian's primordial spirit, suddenly chuckled. In the next moment, Sun Jian's entire body instantly fell to the ground, and cold sweat covered his forehead. Elder Hu, could you explain in detail what is happening? The great Ling Emperor turned to Hu Wenchen, his eyes cold and searching. Ha ha, great Ling Emperor, let me explain this matter. Unexpectedly, Venerable Hun Tian spoke before Hu Wenchen could say anything. I just want to ask one thing, great Ling Emperor and all of you present, have you seriously considered your own future? This question immediately caused a sudden change in the expressions of the great Ling Emperor and everyone present. What do you mean by that? Xiao Taiwang asked gravely. Venerable Hun Tian chuckled. It doesn't mean anything special, it means in a literal sense. You must be well aware of the current situation of your world. You can't possibly be naive enough to think that your world still has a future, right? Even if it does, what does that have to do with you? Do you really think that Jang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan will tolerate you? His series of rhetorical questions dramatically altered the expressions of the great Ling Emperor, Xiao Taiwang, and everyone else present. And now I am here representing my Supreme Master, offering you a chance, a real chance to survive. Upon hearing this, the great Ling Emperor, Xiao Taiwang, and everyone else understood the true intention of Venerable Hun Tian. The great Ling Emperor and Xiao Taiwang exchanged glances. After a while, the great Ling Emperor looked at Venerable Hun Tian and said in a deep voice, "What do you want?" Hearing this, a smile appeared on the face of Venerable Hun Tian. He nodded in satisfaction. Talking to intelligent people is indeed agreeable. Our demand is very simple, which is... As he spoke, Venerable Hun Tian outlined his demands to everyone present. Everyone's eyes narrowed upon hearing them. They turned to the great Ling Emperor and Xiao Taiwang. The two were silent for a moment before slowly responding. We can agree to your demands, but we need to discuss some details further. Passing, time went on and on. 300 years had elapsed since the last great battle. During these 3 centuries, the development of the northern border had been nothing short of remarkable. Particularly noteworthy was the Tao-seeking academy established by the Jang family, which had now spread across most of the northern border. Accompanying this expansion was the implementation of corresponding rules wherever the academy was established. The cultivation environment throughout the northern border had become much more peaceful under this influence. At the very least, within the defined areas, acts of murder and robbery for treasure had become a thing of the past. Another point worth mentioning was that, 30 years ago, Jiang Anren stepped down as the head of the Tao-seeking academy to focus on cultivation. Her successor was Huang Linger, who had become the most popular teacher in the academy. Not only was she the most favored by the students, but she was also the best in teaching. She had even truly understood her own path of cultivation. 50 years ago, she successfully transcended the heavenly tribulation and achieved nascent soul. This was unforeseen by anyone in the past. Before the establishment of Tao-seeking academy, Huang Linger's cultivation aptitude was considered decent at best. With limited combat experience, reaching the peak of Violet Palace would have likely been her limit. At that time, even Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were mentally prepared for this outcome. Unexpectedly, since she started teaching at the academy, her cultivation began to change day by day. She not only successfully formed her golden core, but had even refined it into a nascent soul. This transformation was truly remarkable. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were confident that, following this trend, Huang Linger's potential to achieve soul formation in the future may even surpass their disciple, Jiang Anren. At this moment, in a place called the Great River of Chenchuan, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were walking step by step on the glittering surface of the water. Jiang Chengxuan said, "Wife, the spiritual qi here shows a confronting flow, originating from the southeast and ending in the northwest. If we want to thoroughly regulate it, it might take us about 20 years here. Shen Ruyan smiled at her husband and nodded, saying, "In that case, let's stay here for 20 years." Over the past nearly 300 years, Jiang Chengxuan indeed did as he initially said, traveling across the entire 9 essences cultivation world together with Shen Ruyan. They helped this world comb through its earth veins, clear waterways, and repair damaged spiritual veins. To date, the number of earth veins, waterways, and spiritual veins they had unblocked and repaired had reached several dozens. Both of them could vaguely sense that, with their efforts, a slight bit of vitality seemed to be recovering in this world. Indistinctly, there seemed to be an invisible fortune quietly integrating into their bodies, making everything they did more effective. Even their cultivation levels had greatly improved over these years without deliberate cultivation, breaking through to the 4th and 5th levels of soul formation, respectively. As time continued to pass, another 300 years later, the earth and spiritual veins and waterways in the northern border and the western desert were almost entirely repaired by Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. At this moment, not only they but many high-level cultivators in the 9 essences cultivation world could clearly feel a renewed sense of vitality and spiritual qi in the environment. During this process, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan's cultivation and strength had once again made breakthroughs, reaching the 5th and 6th levels of soul formation, respectively. In addition, Jiang Chengxuan's yin-yang divine water Jade, while repairing the waterway of the great river of Chenchuan, received feedback from the waterway's origin, allowing it to directly advance to the level of a pure yang true treasure. Now, Jiang Chengxuan only needed to wait for his eternal scorching sun furnace to advance to a pure yang true treasure to proceed with his next treasure refining plan. However, at this moment, a piece of bad news suddenly reached them. Their 5th granduncle, Shen Yuanlong, had reached the end of his lifespan. Jiang Chengxuan immediately used the heavenly calculation technique to calculate, and found that this matter had indeed become an unchangeable fate, primarily because Shen Yuanlong had consumed life-extending spiritual items 3 times in his earlier years. Despite having these items and his cultivation stagnating without further breakthroughs, even the extraordinarily heaven-defying longevity peach fruit in Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan's possession was of no use to him. "Let's go, wife. We should return to see 5th granduncle for the last time," Jiang Chengxuan sighed. At this point, all they could do was to see off Shen Yuanlong on his last journey. Shen Ruyan nodded sadly, and the couple immediately tore through space, arriving at the Shen family in no time. At this moment, the entire Shen family was extremely busy. As the family's ancestor and Shen Ruyan's only senior, Shen Yuanlong held an irreplaceable position in the Shen family. Now that he was about to reach the end of his lifespan, this was undoubtedly a huge matter for the entire Shen family. All the members of the Shen family understood. Once Shen Yuanlong passed away, the connection between the Shen family, Shen Ruyan, and Jiang Chengxuan would sharply decline. Although Shen Ruyan's older brother, Shen Dayaming, was still around, it was undeniable that in many matters and issues, Shen Yuanlong could speak directly to Shen Ruyan and Jiang Chengxuan, but Shen Dayaming could not. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan had arrived at Shen Yuanlong's cave abode. During this time, they did not alert any members of the Shen family. Given their current cultivation and strength, it was very easy for them not to be noticed by the members of the Shen family. In the room, there was only Shen Yuanlong, lying on the bed, and Shen Dayaming by his side. It was apparent that Shen Yuanlong no longer possessed the demeanor of a golden core cultivator. He resembled an elderly man from the mortal world. His hair was white, his face was covered in wrinkles, and the life force in his body was diminishing moment by moment. At this moment, the 2 people in the room seemed to sense something, and simultaneously turned their heads to look at the other side. Chengxuan Ruyan, Shen Dayaming couldn't help but speak out. "Brother," both Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan nodded to Shen Dayaming, greeting him. Then they stepped forward and approached Shen Yuanlong's bedside, looking at him without uttering a word for a long time. At this point, Shen Yuanlong was clearly unable to say anything. He could only use his cloudy eyes to gaze intently at the 2 of them. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan also really didn't know what to say. Apart from saying, "We're here," they each extended a hand and held one of Shen Yuanlong's dry, aged hands. Just like that, Some time later, Shen Yuanlong, who had been unable to speak and lay motionless on the bed, suddenly sat up. His face, full of wrinkles, unexpectedly showed a touch of rosiness, and his spirit, qi, and essence reached a peak at that moment. Jiang Chengxuan, Shen Ruyan, and Shen Daoming, seeing Shen Yuanlong in this state, felt a sinking feeling in their hearts. They knew that this was probably Shen Yuanlong's final burst of energy, the last flicker of a candle's flame. He turned his head to look at Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan, and began to speak with a faint smile. Chengxuan Ruyan, I never thought that in my final days I would still be able to see you too. Now I truly have no regrets. You don't need to be too sad. In fact, I've lived many more years than I ever expected. Back in the day, who would have thought that I, an old man, would one day advance to golden core? So I'm truly satisfied. My only wish is that once you ascend to the higher realms, you'll take a look at the scenery there for me. Besides that, I have no other desires. Saying this, Shen Yuanlong grabbed Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan's hands, then put them together and patted them firmly. Finally, he turned to Shen Daoming with a smile and said, Daoming, after I'm gone, the Shen family will depend on you. But you don't need to worry too much. Children and grandchildren have their own blessings, and it's up to them to decide how far the Shen family will go in the future. After saying these words, Shen Yuanlong slowly closed his eyes and passed away with a smile. From beginning to end, he didn't ask Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan to help take care of the Shen family or anything like that. He understood that, with their level of cultivation and strength, their perspective was no longer focused on trivial matters of a single family or place. Sometimes, leaving things unsaid can be better than saying them. Besides, at his stage in life, what couldn't he let go of or see through? In the following days, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan stayed in the Shen family. They remained there for nearly half a year, partly to mourn and partly to reminisce. After all, following this event, it would be difficult for them to stay in the Shen family for such an extended period, and their visits in the future would likely be infrequent. Shen Daoming clearly understood this as well. Thus, during these 6 months, whenever he was free, he would visit the small courtyard where his sister and brother-in-law resided to spend time with them. However, one day, when Shen Daoming arrived at the mountain peak courtyard where Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan lived, he was surprised to find that besides them, there were 2 more people in the courtyard. Shen Daoming, as a golden core cultivator, was not unfamiliar to these 2 figures. They were Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang from Hidden Sword Palace and Dongfang, Tianxing from the sect of Infinite Boundaries of the Western Desert. At this moment, the expressions of these 2, along with Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan, were all marked with seriousness. Upon seeing Shen Daoming, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan nodded to him. Shen Ruyan spoke, Brother, something has come up. Today my husband and I will have to leave. Shen Daoming was taken aback by her sudden announcement, filled with confusion about what could prompt such a reaction from his sister and brother-in-law. But he understood that some matters might be beyond his inquiry. If there were anything significant, they would surely not keep it from him. With this thought, he nodded in understanding. If there's something important, then you should go ahead. When you have time, you're always welcome to come back, Shen Daoming replied. Okay. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan nodded. And without further delay, they, along with Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing, departed from the Shen family. On the way, Jiang Chengxuan asked, Fellow Taoist Dongfeng and Senior Chuan Yang, you mentioned earlier about a surge of demons causing chaos in the southern wilderness. What exactly is happening? What about our people there? Why haven't we received any news about this until now? Just now, Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing had sought out Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan to deliver alarming news. An immense number of demons had appeared in the southern wilderness, attacking on sight. Since the battle 600 years ago, the eastern end and central plain had withdrawn most of their forces from the southern wilderness, leaving the northern border and western desert to station some people there for stabilizing and balancing the chaotic situation, as well as for strategic needs. However, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were puzzled by the delay in receiving news of such a significant uprising of demons. More intriguingly, they found it odd that they had not sensed or foreseen such an event themselves. This was very problematic. At this moment, Dongfeng Tianxing said, It must be that someone has deliberately obscured the heavens' secrets, even confusing the perceptions of our people, so that they remained unaware from the beginning to the end. Had it not been for my wife Xian's recent visit to the southern wilderness, we might still be in the dark about what exactly happened there. With these words, a serious expression appeared on Dongfeng Tianxing's face. He continued, "This suggests that our last operation did not root out all those hidden in our 9 essences cultivation world. Among them, there should still be a portion of people hidden. And most importantly, according to our investigation, those demons are targeting not only us and the native cultivators of the southern wilderness, but also those from the eastern end and the central plain." Really? This statement instantly made Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan's eyes narrow. Shen Ruyan asked, "So, are there any movements from the eastern end and the central plain? Where are they? What are their people's reactions?" This is also what I'm most puzzled about now. It's also the main reason why fellow Taoist Xuan Yang and I came to look for you. Dongfeng Tianxing frowned. He seemed confused. He said again, "Those people from the eastern end and central plain don't seem to have any reaction. And by no reaction, I mean literally. Those people, facing demons that threaten their lives, show neither resistance nor fear, allowing them to take their lives and devour their souls, completely transforming them into one of their own kind." What? Both Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan were astounded. They couldn't understand how, facing a group that wanted to take their lives, the lack of fear was one thing, but the absence of resistance was quite another, letting those demons take their lives, devour their souls, and even transform them into their kind. In such a situation, the cultivators of both regions remained indifferent, which seemed very suspicious. Unless those people no longer knew what fear was. Or perhaps those people had already lost their sense of self. Otherwise, it was hard to explain the reaction of the people from the eastern end and the central plain. Is it possible that those people had already been controlled by the culprits behind all this beforehand? At this point, Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang couldn't help but frown and speak out. Hearing his words, both Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan felt a stir in their hearts. Jiang Chengxuan said, "The scenario Senior Chuan Yang mentioned is not impossible. But the problem is, our people don't seem to be experiencing what they are. This doesn't quite add up logically. It's unlikely that the culprits behind this only controlled the cultivators of the eastern end and the central plain, and didn't target our cultivators right. Can't figure it out, really can't figure it out." Dongfeng Tianxing shook his head repeatedly, baffled by the situation. "The best course of action now might be for us to personally visit the southern wilderness. Maybe then we might find some answers." Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. Jiang Chengxuan said, "Fellow Taoist Dongfeng, Senior Xuan Yang, why don't you let my wife and I personally investigate this matter? You two should continue to oversee the northern border and the western desert. Meanwhile, try to contact other allies, and together conduct a thorough search for these demons in our territories. With our strength, even if there is hidden danger in the southern wilderness, we should be able to retreat safely if we can't handle it. What do you think?" Hearing Jiang Chengxuan's proposal, Heavenly Lord Xuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing exchanged glances and soon made their decision. Heavenly Lord Xuan Yang said, "In that case, I'll leave it to you. In the meantime, I will contact Everlasting Mountain and Infinite Ocean, and with Dongfeng, we'll conduct a thorough investigation in the northern border and the western desert, not letting any potential danger slip by." "Good." Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan nodded with a smile. Without further delay, the 4 of them set off on their respective tasks. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan headed straight for the southern wilderness, while Heavenly Lord Xuan Yang and Dongfeng Tianxing went to other destinations. With Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan's current speed, it didn't take them long to reach the southern wilderness from the northern border. Upon their arrival, they immediately sensed a dense aura of evil permeating the area. Even the surrounding spiritual qi was tinged with demonic auras, which was extremely dangerous. Once the spiritual qi of this region became fully contaminated, it would be a disaster for the cultivators of this region. Most importantly, the demonic qi within the spiritual qi was incredibly covert. Had it not been for Jiang Chengxuan being an expert in this area and their heightened sensitivity to demonic qi, it would have been difficult to detect. At the very least, Xian, who had come here before, should not have noticed this. It seemed the situation in the southern wilderness was even more severe and complicated than they had initially thought. Whoosh! Just as they landed in a cultivation city, thousands of variously shaped demonic monsters, like cat-smelling fish, crazily rushed towards them. "Wife, protect me while I use these creatures to deduce the general situation here." Yang Chengxuan looked at the demonic monsters that were swarming towards them and suddenly said to Shen Ruyan. Hearing Yang Chengxuan's words, Shen Ruyan immediately understood what her husband wanted to do. She nodded. "Don't worry, husband. With me here, no one will disturb you." "Okay." Yang Chengxuan nodded slightly. Then he suddenly formed a seal, and a mysterious and complicated aura appeared on Yang Chengxuan's body. Crack! At the same time, a circle of lightning spread out in all directions with Shen Ruyan and Yang Chengxuan at the center. Buzz! Instantly, all the demonic monsters rushing towards them and touching the lightning net were trapped in it. They were like insects caught in a spider web. No matter how they struggled and roared, they could not break free from the lightning net. Buzz! At the same time, Jiang Chengxuan's aura became more ethereal, almost merging with the world around him. Suddenly, his hands formed an extremely intricate and strange seal. His eyes shone brightly, and he uttered a single word. "Rise!" Boom! At that moment, all the demonic monsters trapped in the lightning net seemed to be swept by some bizarre force. In an instant, their bodies were like weathered rocks. With a light blow of the wind, they disappeared without a trace. The force continued to spread, immobilizing and sacrificing all incoming demonic monsters, turning them into dust. "How is it, husband?" When Shen Ruyan saw Jiang Chengxuan stop and open his eyes again, she couldn't help but ask. Jiang Chengxuan heaved a sigh of relief. He spat out 2 words with a slightly ugly expression. "Great danger." "What?" Shen Ruyan's eyes narrowed. She said in disbelief. "Great danger, what does that mean?" "In a literal sense," Yang Chengxuan replied, his face regaining its color. He turned to Shen Ruyan and explained. "These demonic monsters not only have the ability to corrupt cultivators, demon beasts, and even mortals into demonic monsters, but every time they absorb the spiritual qi of this world, they taint it with a bit of demonic qi. Although the demonic qi is very faint, as it accumulates, eventually, it will contaminate the spiritual qi of this world." "How did this happen?" At this moment, Shen Ruyan also realized the seriousness of the issue. If left unchecked, their 9 essences cultivation world would inevitably become a haven for demons. Under such circumstances, the will of the world would definitely fall into an indefinite sleep. At that time, the person in the outer world would probably not need to spend too much effort to successfully refine this world. His first target was exactly the most chaotic southern wilderness, without a true soul formation heavenly lord. By occupying it and turning it into a demonic haven, they could use it as a base to advance towards the northern border, western desert, and even the eastern end and central plain. Therefore, if we want to stop this from happening, we have to eliminate all the demonic monsters. Shen Ruyan asked, looking at Jiang Chengxuan gravely. "Yes and no." Jiang Chengxuan first nodded, then shook his head. "To resolve this, exterminating all the demonic monsters is only the first step. What we really need to do next is to find and eliminate the source of this problem. That's the only way to truly remove this threat." Boom! While they spoke, Shen Ruyan summoned endless thunder around her. With a light stomp of her feet on the ground, a circular wave of lightning spread out, engulfing the entire cultivation city. Buzz! In an instant, the entire city seemed to have encountered a world-destroying lightning. All the demonic monsters in the city and thousands of kilometers outside the city were reduced to ashes in an instant. "Let's start by eradicating all the demonic monsters in the southern wilderness," Shen Ruyan declared, her eyes gathering storms of thunder. Without a word, Jiang Chengxuan transformed into a brilliant sword light, darting towards the distance. Rumble! It was as if heavenly punishment descended wherever Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan passed. All demonic monsters, regardless of their level, were incinerated. It was only when they reached the area controlled by the eastern end and central plain that their expressions suddenly became serious. "These people..." Yang Chengxuan suddenly raised his hand and stopped Shen Ruyan from continuing to attack. Instead, he continued to make hand seals and calculate. Wisps of spiritual light began to condense at his fingertips. However, this time, before he could calculate for long, the spiritual light on his fingertips extinguished with a puff. Husband, what's happening? Seeing this, Shen Ruyan's expression changed. She turned to look at Jiang Chengxuan. Jiang Chengxuan's eyes suddenly became deep. He said slowly, "There seems to be some special power that has intercepted my calculations, preventing me from perceiving their true secrets." Intercepted your calculations? Shen Ruyan's expression changed once again. Could it be that person from the outer world? Shen Ruyan instinctively pointed upwards. In her mind, the only one currently capable of intercepting Jiang Chengxuan's calculations was that entity from the outer world. Jiang Chengxuan did not deny it. After pondering for a moment, he continued softly. "Even if it's not, it definitely has something to do with him. I suspect it's that survivor who might possess some kind of treasure that can shield against calculations." As he spoke, a cold smile formed on Jiang Chengxuan's lips. "But what he doesn't realize is that by using it to block my calculations, it already reveals a lot." "You mean?" Shen Ruyan's beautiful eyes flashed, as she seemed to have realized something. "That's right." Jiang Chengxuan nodded. "Everything happening here might be the doings of the eastern end and the central plane." "Really?" Although she had her suspicions at this moment, Shen Ruyan still found it hard to believe. After all, the eastern end and the central plane were native human cultivators from the 9 essences cultivation world. If the demon race, in order to ensure the continuation of their own species, chose to secretly ally with that entity from the outer world, it was understandable. But for the eastern end and the central plane to do so was truly incomprehensible. What benefit would it bring them? Could they really believe that by allying with that entity, they would have a future? "I don't know about that." Jiang Chengxuan shook his head. "However, before that, perhaps I can calculate other aspects to corroborate our current speculation." Saying this, Jiang Chengxuan's fingertips once again shone with a mystical light. This time, his calculations were not about the current situation, nor about the people from the eastern end and the central plane, but about the future fate and direction of the Rising Sun Hall. Based on this, Jiang Chengxuan could approximately deduce some of the things he wanted to know. Soon, the light at Jiang Chengxuan's fingertips gradually faded. Shen Ruyan couldn't help but ask anxiously, "How is it? Husband, did you figure out anything?" Jiang Chengxuan's expression was slightly grave. He nodded and said, "I just calculated the future destiny of the Rising Sun Hall and found that it is currently facing a very significant danger. If there is no external intervention, its downfall may just be a matter of time." After a pause, Jiang Chengxuan continued, "From this, I can basically deduce that the eastern end and the central plane have already fully aligned themselves with that entity from the outer world. I don't know what exactly was promised to them, but since they have chosen this path, there is no turning back. So, no matter what, we cannot let their plans succeed." "Are you saying we should head to the eastern end now?" Shen Ruyan asked Jiang Chengxuan. "That's right." Jiang Chengxuan nodded slightly. "The coming battle will be a fight to the death. So, we must unite all the forces we can. When the time is right, we will deal a fatal blow to those people." As he spoke, Jiang Chengxuan suddenly released 2 puppets from his own body. These 2 puppets emitted an incredibly powerful aura, both having reached the early stage of level 6. This was also the foundation that Jiang Chengxuan had accumulated over the past 600 years. He instructed the 2 puppets, "Kill all demonic monsters below level 6 and escort our people back to the northern border and western desert." "Yes." The 2 puppets immediately knelt to receive their orders. After their figures disappeared, Jiang Chengxuan turned to Shen Ruyan and said, "Wife, we should not delay any longer. Let's head to the eastern end now. Using this opportunity, we might be able to pacify the eastern end ahead of schedule." As they spoke, the figures of Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan disappeared from the spot. Eastern end. Mount Rising Sun. This place was the true location of the Rising Sun Hall. In the past, this place was concealed by a great array, making it difficult for ordinary people, even those at the level of soul formation, to perceive its real existence. However, today, countless floating warships, cultivators, and even demonic monsters appeared outside the protective array of Mount Rising Sun. Blue Moon, Kong Ming, and another soul formation heavenly lord named Shang Heian of the Rising Sun Hall all looked at the crowd outside the array with unsightly expressions. "Damn it! What is going on with the 3 Suns sect? the Chu family, and the Radiant Sword sect. How could they be mixing with those inhuman, ghostly creatures? Xianxia, dressed in a black robe, spoke with a dark expression. Hearing his words, Blue Moon and Kong Ming beside him gradually became solemn. Blue Moon said, "Do you think it's possible that those families have already pledged allegiance to that entity?" "You mean?" The words of Blue Moon immediately changed the expressions of Xianxia and Kong Ming. In their minds, such a thing was utterly unthinkable. It was known that because of that entity, countless cultivators in their world had perished without a trace. The most important aspect was that they, who stood in opposition to that entity, had now chosen to pledge allegiance to it, which seemed utterly unreliable no matter how one looked at it. Moreover, allying with such an entity, could it ever be without a price? Did they really think this world was already dead? However, the events unfolding before them forced Xianxia and Kong Ming to consider this possibility. After all, if it wasn't for such a situation, how could the Three Suns sect and the Chu family mingle with those demonic monsters without any issues? Bastard! If that's true, those guys from the Three Suns sect truly deserve to die. It was evident that Xianxia was quite hot-tempered. His anger became uncontrollable after contemplating the possibilities that Blue Moon's words had suggested. Boom! Just then, a loud noise echoed between heaven and earth. Above in the sky, two incredibly powerful figures appeared, catching the eyes of Blue Moon and the others. Seeing those two people, Blue Moon, Xianxia, and Kong Ming's pupils involuntarily constricted. Kong Ming couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "Hu Wenchen Luo Beishan, it's them." In that moment, the hearts of the three present sank deeply. They weren't fools. They knew very well what the appearance of Hu Wenchen and Luo Beishan signified. It meant they were here to completely annihilate the Rising Sun Hall. Most importantly, did the appearance of these two indicate that the Great Ling Imperial Palace of the Central Plain and other sects had also chosen to pledge allegiance to that entity? If so, their 9 essences cultivation world was likely in real danger. As they were pondering, Hu Wenchen and Luo Beishan had already approached the great array of Mount Rising Sun. A smile appeared on Hu Wenchen's face. His gaze seemed to pierce through the layers of protective arrays, falling directly upon Blue Moon, Xianxia, and Kong Ming. Hu Wenchen suddenly spoke, "Fellow Taoists, I presume there's no need for me to introduce myself. Today, General Luo and I have come here with one purpose, to offer the Rising Sun Hall one last opportunity, a chance for survival. One last opportunity, a chance for survival." Hearing Hu Wenchen's words, a cold smile appeared on Xianxia's face. Blue Moon and Kong Ming remained expressionless. At their level of cultivation, it was almost impossible to be affected by others or external factors. Hu Wenchen, your so-called opportunity, a way out, wouldn't happen to be us submitting to you, would it? Xianxia couldn't help but coldly retort with a sneer. This caused Hu Wenchen to frown slightly before turning to look at Blue Moon and Kong Ming. The two of you must have seen the current situation. With the strength we have shown, breaking through the protective array of your Rising Sun Hall is only a matter of time. You really wish to let your disciples and followers perish with you in this battle. Hearing his words, Blue Moon, Kong Ming, and Xianxia exchanged a glance. Finally, Blue Moon's beautiful eyes suddenly shone with a cold light, her gaze sharp as she looked at Hu Wenchen and said, "Hu Wenchen, tell me the truth. Has the Great Ling Imperial Palace and the various sects chosen to side with that entity from the outer world?" Huh? Blue Moon's reaction slightly surprised Hu Wenchen. But soon, the smile on his face slowly faded. He said indifferently, "You need not concern yourself with that matter. Now I ask you, are you willing to submit to us?" A hint of indignation appeared in Blue Moon's eyes, followed by a mocking tone. "I never thought that the mighty Great Ling Imperial Palace and myriad form sect would choose to be dogs. Do you really think that what you are doing now will go unnoticed by others? So it seems you are unwilling to accept the opportunity we are offering you." A hint of murderous intent appeared on Hu Wenchen's face. Luo Tianba, standing beside him, had his long spears buzzing, emitting a terrifying glow. The space around it rippled in waves. If they are so stubborn, Elder Hu, there's nothing more to say. After today, there will be no more Rising Sun Hall. Boom! As his words fell, Luo Tianba's spear suddenly transformed into a huge mountain peak, which roared down towards Mount Rising Sun with overwhelming force. Seeing this, Hu Wenchen also ceased his words. He raised his hand and waved. A dark disk suddenly expanded into a small world, crashing down towards Mount Rising Sun with terrifying force. At the same time, the cultivators from the Three Suns sect, the Chu family, and the Radiant Sword sect, who were outside the great array of Mount Rising Sun, also made their moves. Among them, the demonic monsters were the most ferocious. They seemed to have no fear of death, recklessly charging at the protective array of Mount Rising Sun in a suicidal manner. Rumble! The void trembled. The entire protective array of Mount Rising Sun shook violently. Its light flickered rapidly. Blue Moon, Xianxia, and Kong Ming's expressions changed slightly. Blue Moon said, "This is bad. The demonic chi on those demonic monsters seems to carry a corrupting power. It can actually affect the operation of the array slightly." Xianxia and Kong Ming also noticed this issue and felt a sinking feeling in their hearts. Such a situation might not pose a big problem in the short term. However, if it persisted, the protective array's spiritual light would inevitably be contaminated. Over time, the operation and power of the entire array would inevitably decline drastically. They must first eliminate those demonic monsters. The three of them came up with a plan. Without hesitation, 3 soul formation attacks were launched through the array, targeting the demonic monsters. Boom, boom, boom. However, what caused Blue Moon and the others' expressions to change again was that their attacks were all blocked by Hu Wenchen and Luo Tianba outside the array. They were determined to protect the demonic monsters at all costs. This made Blue Moon and the others finally confirm that the sects, dynasties, and families of the Central Plane and the Eastern End had indeed pledged allegiance to that entity. The reason why they were confident that they could break the Rising Sun Hall's mountain-protecting array was probably because of those demonic monsters. The contamination of the spiritual light by the demonic monsters was too severe. Theoretically, if there were enough demonic monsters, even a top-grade level 6 array could be contaminated and collapse. Boom, boom, boom. At this point, the battle became even more intense. Blue Moon, Xianxia, and Kong Ming put forth all their strength, using the power of the array to combat Hu Wenchen and others outside. However, what weighed on their minds was that, after so long, including themselves, the cultivators of Rising Sun Hall were unable to do anything about the demonic monsters. Whenever they targeted the demonic monsters, numerous cultivators would appear to block their attacks. Over time, their side became more and more passive, and the morale of the Rising Sun Hall cultivators started to wane. This is no good. At this rate, we have no hope of winning. At this moment, a Rising Sun Hall cultivator named Han Zhengyang, who was at the 7th level of the Golden Core and was in charge of presiding over a certain part of the array, could not help but speak with a pessimistic expression. Hearing his words, the expressions of the other Rising Sun Hall cultivators also darkened. Only Nangong Hai and Nangong Yao's eyes flashed fiercely as they looked at Han Zhengyang. "Junior Zhou, what are you talking about? With the 3 ancestors here, it's only a matter of time before we drive those people back. Everyone, keep your spirits up. We're conceding defeat even before the enemy has made a significant move. This is hardly acceptable." These words slightly invigorated many of those present. After all, over the years, the entire Rising Sun Hall had been supported by the 3 elders. Everyone's confidence in the elders was immensely strong. Only Han Zhengyang's eyes flickered slightly. Seeing that the attention of the others was no longer on him, he discreetly produced a dark black bead in his hand. In the next moment, a look of determination flashed in his eyes. Without any hesitation, he threw the dark black bead into the foundation of the array he was responsible for. Squeak! Boom! Instantly, a wave of evil and ominous black light burst forth from that part of the array. This sudden turn of events took everyone by surprise, and the once radiant protective array of the Rising Sun Hall was suddenly enveloped in a layer of black mist. "Han Zhengyang, what are you doing?" Nangong Hai and Nangong Yao, who immediately noticed this, were first shocked and then furious. Without any hesitation, they both reached out to grab Han Zhengyang. Given their nascent soul cultivation, dealing with Han Zhengyang, who was only at the 7th level of Golden Core, should have been easy. However, when their dharmic hands made contact with Han Zhengyang, a black light suddenly appeared, blocking their hands. "What?" Nangong Hai, Nangong Yao, and everyone present were taken aback. It was only at this moment that they realized something was terribly wrong. At this point, Han Zhengyang's eyes had turned a sinister black, and his aura became incredibly malevolent. Threads of black qi like tendrils swirled around him. Seeing this, Nangonghai and the others' expressions drastically changed. He's become demonized, Junior Han, you've actually. Halasa. Suddenly, Han Zhengyang burst into wild laughter. His cultivation level also skyrocketed in that very moment. 8th level golden core, 9th level golden core, fake nascent soul. 1st level of nascent soul. And it was still climbing. The strange thing was that there was no trace of the heavenly tribulation in the sky. What the hell is going on? Nangonghai and the others felt an ominous sense of foreboding. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At the same time, dozens of black shadows suddenly flew out from within Han Zhengyang's body. Each of these black shadows had the cultivation of the 1st level of nascent soul. Upon their appearance, they immediately pounced towards the golden core cultivators present. Arg! Before Nangonghai and the others could react, a series of screams rang out. Wherever these shadows passed, the golden core cultivators all showed expressions of agony, and within half a breath, they all fell lifeless, evidently dead. Such a sinister and evil method. Frankly, Nangonghai and the others had never seen anything like it before. The most shocking aspect was that, when these shadows charged at them, they only managed to fight them to a stalemate. What kind of joke was this? Keep in mind, Nangonghai and the others were at the mid-stage of nascent soul cultivation. And these shadows were merely entities that had split off from Han Zhengyang's body. Their cultivation level was only at the 1st level of nascent soul. Yao ** starred. Finally, Shang Heian and the others noticed the situation on Nangonghai's side. Accompanied by a furious shout, a giant hand slammed down. Those black shadows that had been rampaging around were instantly blasted into nothingness. Even Han Zhengyang himself appeared riddled with cracks, like a porcelain about to shatter. Han Zhengyang, tell me, why are you doing this? Shang Heian's angry voice rang out. However, the response he received was Han Zhengyang's sinister smile. Boom! With a loud explosion, Han Zhengyang's entire body suddenly burst apart. In an instant, countless evil black lights shot out in all directions. Shang Heian's expression was grim. With a single pointed finger from him, there was a buzz. In an instant, the black lights that had been shooting out in all directions were suddenly frozen in midair. Then came a series of popping sounds. The black lights burst simultaneously, dissipating into nothingness. Halasa! But just at that moment, a loud laugh suddenly filled everyone's ears. Hu Wenchen, looking at Shang Heian, Blue Moon, and Kong Ming inside the array, spoke. How do you feel about the gift I prepared for you? Without waiting for their response, he turned his gaze towards the other disciples of the Rising Sun Hall and said with a smile, Friends of the Rising Sun Hall, you all must have seen what just happened. Now you might wonder how many more like him are there among you, a second one, a third, a fourth, or even 5th and 6th or more. These words immediately added to the already shaken morale of the people. Every face turned exceedingly grim. Many began to look suspiciously at their companions. Clearly, Hu Wenchen's words had instilled doubt among the disciples of the Rising Sun Hall, causing them to suspect each other. After all, the scenes that unfolded earlier were witnessed by everyone. A single misstep could mean death. Shang Heian, Blue Moon, and Kong Ming were also aware of this. Their expressions changed dramatically as they intensified their attacks. Powerful strikes were launched towards Hu Wenchen, Luo Tianba, and the others outside the array. At the same time, Blue Moon's voice resounded in the minds of every Rising Sun Hall disciple. Do not let the enemy's words sway your minds. I can assure you that something like what happened just now will not occur again. As she spoke, a water blue light screen suddenly swept over every disciple of the Rising Sun Hall. Instantly, 3 of the disciples showed signs of agony on their faces. Boom! Without any surprise, a delicate jade hand like a massive mountain came crashing down on those 3 disciples. Chenzing Bai Ming Li Dayu, you have disappointed me. As her words fell, the 3 named disciples of the Rising Sun Hall exploded, and large clumps of black light surged out from their bodies. However, as soon as these black lights touched Blue Moon's jade hand, they all burst into nothingness. This action immediately shook the spirits of all the Rising Sun Hall disciples present. The previously panic-stricken atmosphere was now under control. However, Hu Wenchen, Luo Tianba, and the others outside the array showed no significant reaction to Blue Moon's actions. Hu Wenchen still wore a confident smile on his face. Blue Moon, Shang Heian, and Kong Ming also felt no joy. Instead, their hearts sank to the bottom. They were acutely aware of the current situation. With one of the array bases contaminated by the demonic qi, the Rising Sun Hall might not hold out much longer. If things went wrong, it might become the last straw that crushed their defenses. Boom, boom, boom. The battle continued. As time went on, the disciples of the Rising Sun Hall, who had regained their confidence, began to feel uneasy again. This was because everyone could clearly see that the light of their Rising Sun Hall's mountain-protecting array was dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this rate, it was uncertain how long the array could hold. Enough of this. Suddenly, Luo Tianba turned to Hu Wenchen and spoke. Hu Wenchen's mouth curled into a slight smile. He nodded in agreement. In the next moment, 10 beads appeared in Hu Wenchen's hand, each emitting a strange glow. Blue Moon, Shang Heian, and Kong Ming recognized them immediately, their expressions changing drastically. They realized that Hu Wenchen was holding 10 top-grade level 5 array-breaking beads. Such beads wouldn't have been effective against the Rising Sun Hall's protective array at the start. But now, with the array already damaged, the possibility of it being breached by these beads was very real. What to do? Anxiety filled the hearts of Blue Moon and the others. But Hu Wenchen, obviously not giving them much time to think, threw all 10 beads at once. In an instant, the entire protective array of the Rising Sun Hall erupted with blinding light. Rumble! The ground shook violently. Every disciple within the array could feel the entire structure shaking intensely. Cracks appeared in the sky and the earth, as if the world was splitting apart, sending a wave of terror through the hearts of all the disciples, turning their faces deathly pale. The array is breaking. As one person voiced this realization, more followed suit, their faces showing despair. Everyone calm down. Continue to hold your positions. The array will not break. Kong Ming, the ancestor, tried to reassure them. With his command, thousands of array flags flew from him, landing in various parts of the array. Buzz. It could be clearly seen. As the array flags settled, the previously shaking, nearly collapsing array began to stabilize. Spiritual light started to surge, repairing the damaged parts of the array. Seeing this scene, many disciples of the Rising Sun Hall breathed a sigh of relief, thinking their ancestors still had a way to save them. However, just as this thought emerged, a disciple named Yang Kai suddenly lunged towards the part of the array damaged by Han Zhengyang. An extremely evil aura surged around him, and black lights flickered as he approached the damaged array base. Yang Kai, what are you doing? Nangong Hai, Nangong Yao, and the other disciples of the Rising Sun Hall were shocked. Even Blue Moon, Shang Heian, and Kong Ming changed their expressions. Quick, stop him. Boom. Unfortunately, everyone was a step too late. As they all rushed towards Yang Kai, he had already plunged into the damaged array base. A series of thunderous booms followed. Yang Kai, along with the array base, turned into a black sea of demonic qi. Evil and malevolent energy surged wildly. In just an instant, the expressions of the Rising Sun Hall disciples who had just approached were suddenly dyed with a layer of darkness. Black earthworm-like patterns began to appear on the surface of their skins. Not good, retreat. Seeing this, Nangong Hai, Nangong Yao, and others didn't dare to get any closer and swiftly retreated. Rumble. However, at this very moment, Hu Wenchen, Luo Tianba, and others outside the array launched their fiercest attack. Rumble. In an instant, the array's light dimmed rapidly, its surface cracking like a spider web. With a faint crackling sound, the Rising Sun Hall's centuries-old level 6 protective array could no longer hold and completely shattered, scattering into countless particles of spiritual qi in all directions. Die. At this moment, there was no trace of a smile on Hu Wenchen and Luo Tianba's faces, only cold, murderous intent. Especially the demonic monsters who, like sharks smelling blood, crazily pounced towards the disciples of the Rising Sun Hall below. Arg! In just an instant, countless disciples of the Rising Sun Hall perished at the hands of the demonic monsters, and the disciples from the eastern end and the central plain. Hu Wenchen, Luo Tianba, I'll fight you to death. Shang Heian, seeing his array broken and countless disciples slain, had eyes red with rage and an aura like a volcano. With a roar, he charged towards Hu Wenchen and the others. "Be careful, senior brother Shang." Blue Moon and Kong Ming changed their expressions upon seeing Shang Heiyun's reaction and attacked Hu Wenchen and Luo Tianba as well. However, what they did not expect was that when they attacked Hu Wenchen and Luo Tianba together with Shang Heiyun, who was charging towards Hu Wenchen and Luo Tianba, suddenly changed his direction. Two nearly imperceptible black lights shot towards Blue Moon and Kong Ming. This change was so sudden that Blue Moon and Kong Ming had no time to react. With a plop, their protective spiritual lights were penetrated. The two of them immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. Their faces instantly turned pale. "Brother Shang Yu." Blue Moon and Kong Ming were utterly incredulous. They couldn't comprehend why their senior brother, Shang Heiyun, would do something like this. Including the disciples of the Rising Sun Hall below who witnessed this scene, their faces also showed disbelief. "Ancestor Shang He." Whoosh. However, what answered them were two more sharp black lights. Shang Heiyun's face, which had been filled with rage, now revealed an icy cold, murderous intent. "Junior sister Lan, junior brother Kong Ming, don't blame me. I just want to continue living." Continue living. Blue Moon and Kong Ming were first stunned, then as if understanding something, they asked in disbelief. "Senior brother Shang, what did Hu Wenchen and the others promise you? To actually make you go against our original intention and the promise you once made?" "Intentions, promises." A self-mocking smile flickered across Shang Heiyun's face. He shook his head. "Junior sister Lan, junior brother Kong Ming, you don't know him at all. My intention has always been just to survive. When we founded the Rising Sun Hall together and fought against the oppression of the major sects, it was so. Now my choice to surrender to the Great Ling Imperial Palace, to that entity from the outer world, is also so." These words hit Blue Moon and Kong Ming like a heavy hammer, turning their faces pale. As it turned out, they had never really understood Shang Heiyun from the beginning. The so-called intentions, desires, and promises were nothing but tools for him to grow stronger and survive. To think that they even treated him as their elder brother, someone they could completely rely on and trust. It was all fake, everything was just an illusion. Or to be more precise, they had misjudged and trusted the wrong person. For a moment, Blue Moon and Kong Tianjin's Dao hearts were slightly unstable, their cultivation showing signs of instability, indicative of falling into demonic madness. However, Shang Heiyun, Hu Wenchen, and Luo Tianba on the opposite side showed no mercy. Seizing the moment of emotional turmoil in their adversaries, they launched a fierce attack. In just an instant, Blue Moon and Kong Ming were gravely injured, on the verge of collapse. However, at this moment, a green light suddenly bloomed in the void. In an instant, it turned into a shield. Ting, 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 a series of sounds rang out. The attacks from Shang Heiyun, Hu Wenchen, and others hit the green shield, only sparking off a series of sparks, unable to break through its defense. This caused Shang Heiyun and the others to narrow their eyes in surprise. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They immediately retreated. At the same time where they had stood, a green sword chi swept through, creating twisted ripples in space. That is, Hu Wenchen, Shang Heiyun, Luo Tianba, and the others all focused their gaze. Looking intently, they saw space opening in that area, and two figures emerged from within. A man and a woman. It was Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. At this moment, they looked around and finally settled their gaze on Blue Moon and Kong Ming, nodding their heads. "Fortunately, it seems we are not too late." As he spoke, Jiang Chengxuan released a sword chi with his hand. The sword chi was golden in color. In the blink of an eye, it split into countless threads. It instantly swept towards the battlefield below. Pub pub pub. Ahi. Arg. In that instant, countless demonic monsters and cultivators from the eastern end and the central plain. Jiang Chengxuan, however, did not focus on the situation below any longer and turned his attention back to Blue Moon and Kong Ming. "Fellow Taoists, the path we choose, the actions we take, and the vows we make are our own affairs, irrelevant to others. The path of cultivation is long and winding, and Hu Hassan T encountered betrayal, mistakes, or confusion along the way. If we choose to punish ourselves for these experiences, becoming trapped in a corner of our thoughts, wouldn't that be making it too easy for our enemies? In doing so, what does it prove other than our original intentions, desires, and promises are just like the morning dew, drying up as soon as the sun shines, and nothing more. These words instantly enlightened Blue Moon and Kong Ming, who were originally in a daze and in pain. Their previously fluctuating and unstable auras immediately stabilized. Their spirit chi and essence also ascended to a higher level, like beacon fires shooting straight into the sky. Thank you for your advice, fellow Taoist Jang. Blue Moon and Kong Ming immediately bowed in gratitude. You are right. On the path of cultivation, all unexpected events are merely tests of the sincerity of our own intentions. As the saying goes, a knife unsharpened is not sharp, jade uncarved is not formed, and a heart unrefined does not know truth from falsehood. We had indeed fallen into a trap just now and were on the brink of disaster. Please accept our gratitude. Saying this, Blue Moon and Kong Ming bowed deeply to Jiang Chengxuan again. This was a gratitude for awakening them to enlightenment, deep as the ocean. A mere bow could hardly express their full appreciation. However, the current moment was obviously not the time for expressing thanks. Jiang Chengxuan did not mind this and turned towards Shang Heian, Hu Wenchen and Luo Tianba, smiling faintly as he said, "Quite the enthusiasm you have there, willing to sacrifice anything just to stay alive. Such courage 11 must admit I don't possess." Shang Heian, Hu Wenchen, Luo Tianba and others' expressions changed instantly. Truth be told, they really hadn't expected to encounter Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan, these formidable figures, at the Rising Sun Hall. This realization made their once confident hearts suddenly uncertain. Their faces reflected their unsettled emotions. Clearly, facing these two, whether it was Shang Heian, Hu Wenchen, or Luo Tianba, none had any assurance they could escape successfully. Yes, at this moment, their thoughts were no longer on other matters, but on how they could possibly escape from the hands of this couple. As if reading their minds, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan exchanged a glance. Without another word, Jiang Chengxuan's figure suddenly disappeared from the spot. A golden streak flashed across the sky. There was a tearing sound. Luo Tianba, who was still standing there vigilantly, suddenly shuddered. The next moment, a golden thin line appeared on his body, starting from his forehead and extending downward. Finally, with a swoosh, his entire body was bisected into two halves. Even his primordial spirit was annihilated in midair. General Luo. Seeing Luo Tianba fall like that, Hu Wenchen, Shang Heian, and the nascent soul cultivators from the Three Suns sect and Chu family were all shocked. They dared not delay any longer. Without a word, their figures turned into afterimages, attempting to tear through the void and escape. Crack! However, at that moment, a flash of lightning suddenly passed by the eyes of a soul formation cultivator from the Chu family. Before he could react, a fierce and powerful thunderbolt turned him into a charred corpse from inside out. Residual arcs of electricity still sporadically flickered out of the 7 orifices of his charred body. Whoosh! At the same time, 2 other nascent soul cultivators from the Three Suns sect and the Radiant Sword sect were suddenly engulfed and buried by countless stones, eventually becoming a tombstone that crashed to the ground, causing a massive surge of spiritual qi. It was the earth elemental divine power that Jiang Chengxuan had comprehended, sky burial. And this further terrified the remaining Hu Wenchen and Shang Heian. The strength of those two had long exceeded the scope of ordinary soul formation cultivators. Not to mention fighting Jiang Hengxuan, the two of them did not even have the qualifications to fight. A hint of pain flashed across Hu Wenchen's eyes. But in the next moment, he gritted his teeth, took out a black jade talisman from his body, and threw it behind him. Buzz! As soon as Hu Wenchen threw the black jade talisman, a twisted black ripple rippled through the void. An aura of evil permeated the air. In just an instant, a demonic monster with 2 legs, red eyes, and holding a steel fork appeared before Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. From its aura, this demonic monster's strength had actually reached the 6th level of soul formation. Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan's eyes narrowed. It seemed that venerable Hun Tian had some tricks up his sleeve. He even possessed such aberrant creatures that were neither human nor ghost. But to think that these creatures can stop us, that's too naive. Splash! The golden void sword in Jiang Chengxuan's hand suddenly emitted a golden light. Buzz! It flashed slightly in the air. When it reappeared, it had already bypassed the demonic monster, positioning itself right in front of Hu Wenchen's chest. How could this be? Hu Wenchen's eyes widened in disbelief. Jiang Chengxuan, however, did not waste any words. With a light grasp in the air, boom, endless sword light surged on the golden void sword. There was a series of sizzling sounds. All of Hu Wenqin's defensive treasures were shattered by the golden void sword at that moment. Subsequently, he disintegrated into nothingness amid his extreme unwillingness. At the same time, the domineering and sharp 5 lightning immortal slayer fiercely swept across the massive body of the demonic monster. Crackle! Boundless lightning flashed. There were also countless golden lightning bolts mixed in. It was the divine devil-bane lightning that was most effective against evil creatures. Roar! The demonic monster roared towards the sky. But in the next second, its huge body was shattered inch by inch under the relentless thunder, ultimately turning into ashes. The phrase "cool for only 3 seconds" perfectly describes the fate of this demonic creature. Whoosh! At that moment, Xianxia had already traversed a great distance. Fear filled his heart, especially when he saw Hu Wenqin and his demonic monster fall under the attacks of Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. His fear intensified. Faster, he must move faster. He roared internally, burning his dharmic power to the extreme. Even his primordial spirit was fully ignited in this moment, all in the hope of escaping from Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan. However, to his chilling dismay, as he crossed tens of thousands of miles in the high skies, ripples suddenly spread through the void around him. His figure was almost immobilized on the spot. No matter how much he tried to exert his dharmic power, burn his primordial spirit, or tear through the void, it was all in vain. Why is this happening? He roared in his heart. I just want to live, why must I die? Boom! Suddenly, Xianxia's eyes turned a bloody red, and his aura intensified threefold from before. What? A voice of surprise echoed in the air. The next moment, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan appeared in front of Xianxia. Is this a sign of falling into demonic madness? Jiang Chengxuan frowned. Shen Ruyan nodded, it seems so. After a pause, she added, Husband, have you noticed that in the 9 essences cultivation world, the rate of cultivators falling into demonic madness during their practice is getting higher? Even a slight flaw in their mental state makes them vulnerable to external evils. That is very true. Jiang Chengxuan nodded in agreement. This is probably the doing of those from the eastern end and the central plane. Oh, and those demons. They probably don't realize that as they turn numerous cultivators and beasts into demonic monsters, some subtle changes are occurring in this world. These changes are happening quietly and steadily. If this situation continues in the future, this world may no longer be suitable for normal cultivators and demons to practice cultivation. Their actions are essentially digging their own graves. Do they really think the other party will be so kind as to help them for nothing? Little do they know, the price was already set the day they agreed to align with them. At this moment, neither Jiang Chengxuan nor Shen Ruyan were in a rush to kill Xianxia. They wanted to see how far this mad state would develop. Roar! Slowly. As time passed, Xianxia's condition worsened. The blood color in his eyes began to turn pitch black, and unknowingly, his aura began to take on a demonic quality. Even the nature of his intrinsic pure Yang treasure underwent a strange transformation, gradually turning towards something resembling a demonic treasure. As more time passed, Xianxia's appearance was unrecognizable. His body was covered with black scales, and 2 curved black horns emerged on his head. Cold and deep black demonic flames swirled around his body. He had completely transformed into a demonic being, losing all traces of his human identity. Is this his ultimate fate after falling into demonic madness? Jiang Chengxuan couldn't help but frown. Looking at Xianxia, whose demonic eyes were fixed on him, and Shen Ruyan, both of them felt a sense of gravity. It wasn't that the demonized Xianxia posed any threat to them, but rather the changes in this world had exceeded their expectations. It seemed that they could not wait any longer after this matter. They had to wipe out all the enemies as quickly as possible. Otherwise, without even needing the intervention of that entity from the outer world, the 9 essences cultivation world might collapse internally. With this in mind, Jiang Chengxuan didn't hold back any longer. He raised his hand and waved. There was a clang. The level 6 pure Yang true treasure, the Demon Cleaver Spirit Sword, suddenly transformed into a brilliant sword light. In a flash, it pierced through Xianxia's forehead. Instantly, the demonic flames surrounding him extinguished, and his body shattered under the sword light of the demon cleaver spirit's sword. Just before his annihilation, Shang Heian seemed to regain a sense of his own consciousness, his eyes revealing a deep regret. "We were wrong, all our choices were wrong." Boom! With his last words, Shang Heian's entire body was completely engulfed by the sword light of the demon cleaver spirit's sword. After some time, inside the Rising Sun Hall, Jiang Chengxuan looked at Blue Moon and Kong Ming, saying solemnly, "Both of you, you must be very clear about the current situation in our 9 essences cultivation world. For us, there's not much time left. If possible, we need to put all our efforts into cleansing the eastern end as quickly as possible, especially the 4 major soul formation forces and those forces that are loyal to them. They must all be dealt with. Do you understand what I mean?" Blue Moon and Kong Ming exchanged a glance and then nodded in unison. "Fellow Taoist Jiang, we understand what you mean. Don't worry, within a month, we will definitely eliminate all traces of the 4 soul formation forces in the eastern end. Especially those hidden demonic cultivators, we won't let any of them off." "Good." Jiang Chengxuan nodded in satisfaction. After that, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan gave them a few more instructions. They didn't stay in the eastern end anymore and soon headed for the central plain. At this moment, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan realized that if they didn't quickly resolve all the unstable elements within the 9 essences cultivation world, their entire 9 essences cultivation world would probably face an apocalypse in advance. At that time, not only them, but all beings in the 9 essences cultivation world would be marching towards a common end. So, this time, Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan had made up their minds to completely annihilate all forces in the central plane that were connected to the entity from the outer world, including the demon race. Boom! So, when Jiang Chengxuan and Shen Ruyan appeared at the border of the central plane, numerous warships flew towards them from not far away. On those warships, Heavenly Lord Infinite Ocean, Heavenly Lord Everlasting Mountain, Heavenly Lord Chuan Yang, Dongfeng Tianxing, Murong Xian, and the other 5 soul formation Heavenly Lords were also present. In the recent past, the couple had brought out the entire foundations of the northern border and western desert. At this time, it was clear to everyone present that the time for a desperate battle had arrived. If they could not annihilate the forces in the central plain and the demon race in the shortest time, staying in their strongholds would be meaningless. Rather than waiting to be destroyed, it's better to strike proactively. Their aim was to catch the enemy off guard. In fact, Jiang Chengxuan's move achieved a certain effect. When Jiang Chengxuan's army of cultivators appeared in the sight of the major sects and families of the central plain, everyone's face showed disbelief. Nobody expected Jiang Chengxuan to make such a decisive move. They were really going to fight them to the death. For a moment, chaos erupted in the central plain. Especially those cultivators, families, and sects aware of the power of Jiang Chengxuan and his wife were unable to hide their fear. Inside the Great Ling Imperial Palace, the current emperor of Great Ling had a livid expression. He looked at the ministers below and asked with a chilling voice, "Can anyone tell me what exactly is happening? How could such a major event occur without us receiving any prior information?" Silence fell below. Clearly, everyone understood that during this process, there must have been a master of calculation who prevented them from foreseeing the heavenly secrets. In fact, up until now, they still did not know what had happened in the eastern end. "Your Majesty, the most important thing now is to think of a way to deal with this battle." At this moment, cultivators from Heaven's Gate sect suddenly stepped out. He continued, "In my opinion, we need to contact the demon race immediately and get them to head to the northern border and the western desert to attack their rear.